Real Talkers, good morning at 8:30 on this Wednesday, January 27th. Appreciate you tuning in. Nice mellow start to this Wednesday morning. I don't know where you're watching from or where you're listening from if you're streaming us, if you're streaming our audio live on Mixlr. But where we are, it is cold right now, and we're happy to have you. It is. This winter weather is for real. And we're excited to have you with us. So whether or not you're throwing an extra coffee into the mix today, whether you're going to, keep those slippers on, stay in the flannel through the morning, you do you. We've got a great show in store coming up in just a few moments. Max Fawcett will join us. He's got a piece in the National Observer speculating around who may be named as Canada's next Governor General. And I'll spoil the surprise because he's already tweeted about it. But he thinks that the Right Honorable Joe Clark might be a good choice. He says, I know he's 81. He says, but I think that Joe Clark may be the right person for the role. This, of course, following the resignation of former Governor General Julie Payette just a short time ago. And we're going to have an update in our newscast coming up at 9 o'clock with regards to some of the rumors that are circulating and some of the redacted reports that are coming out that are painting more of a clear picture of what it may have been like to work alongside or to work with Governor General Payette. Some reports of unwanted physical contact. It sounds like it might have been a total nightmare. So this choice has to be a good one. The Prime Minister's got to make a good choice here because all eyes are going to be on his choice. It's probably one that many Canadians, let's be honest, let's be real for a second, most people, if you would have stopped them on the street prior to 2 weeks ago and said, hey, how's the Governor General chosen? I bet you a lot of Canadians would say, well, by the Queen? Or somebody or somebody makes a list and suggests to the Queen. Well, it's the Prime Minister that makes the call, and Sam's going to make his argument. He's considered Perry Bellegarde. He's considered Katie Lang. There are many choices that could be made, and we'll find out why he thinks that Joe Clark is the one. Plus, the Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge will be welcoming the Bachelorette, the production, to its property early into the spring. Well, winter into spring, it means that they've had to cancel a whole bunch of reservations, but there's a lot of really neat elements. Probably nobody knows more about The Bachelor and The Bachelorette than my partner in life. Formerly my Bachelorette, until I put a ring on it. She accepted my final rose, and here we are years later. Kerry Skelton, lifestylist and blogger at KerrySkelton.com, will join us before 9 o'clock to shed some insight into what's happening in Jasper. It's actually huge news for Jasper tourism, for people that have been laid off through the pandemic, for what that property's been able to do. I know that some people in the film and production communities are not thrilled. That it doesn't look like they're going to be hiring a lot of local talent when it comes to the production of it. I think that's very easily explained. And I think that people aren't considering the reality of what goes on. This is a TV show that travels all around the world all the time. In other words, they've got a long-time crew that travels with the production. So it wouldn't make sense, in my opinion. And I'm someone that has worked in film and television in Alberta for a lot of years. Doesn't make sense to me to hire local, but we can get into that in time. In the 9 o'clock hour, we're talking mental health today. We're going to talk about addictions. We're going to be talking about a buddy of mine, Chris. You may know him from his music involvement or his mental health advocacy. He's all over the map in Alberta. What I mean is he's all over people's radar. And living with bipolar disorder and the way that he manages it and the way that he talks about it is just remarkable. And I'm so proud of him. He's going to be joining us as part of our panel coming up at 9 o'clock today. And at 10 o'clock, laughing. Cameron Hughes is going to join us. He is the world's most excited. Sam, can you call up his book cover? This is amazing. The photo of him just, I think, kind of says it all. The king of cheer. But he is the world's most celebrated crowd igniter. In his words, the world's most electrifying crowd igniter. If you've been to a National Hockey League game in Canada, whether it's Leafs, Sens, Oilers, Flames, whatever, you've seen this guy in action. He works in the NBA. He's worked at the U.S. Open. He's worked a ton of stuff. FA Cup, I think we're going to hear his stories and find out what makes him tick. An absolute blast. As mentioned, Max Fawcett in just a moment right now wanted to remind you that the team at Bitcoin Well is so important in what we're doing each and every day as our title and presenting sponsor. And we know for a lot of people, they play a really important role in helping you understand understand cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. More and more people are getting involved right now based on a number of different trends, economic, political. Bitcoin has really been a story to keep an eye on early in 2021. While Bitcoin Well is centered and headquartered right here in Edmonton, but they have those Bitcoin ATMs all across Canada. And of course, you can find them online under the sponsors tab at ryanjesperson.com.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Okay, we got Max Fawcett coming up in just a moment. Looking forward to this conversation. His piece in the National Observer, speculating around who might be named as Canada's next Governor General. Sam Brooks is the technical producer of this show. He's saying former PM Joe Clark. What do you think?
It's made it sound like I was saying former PM Joe Clark. It's not a terrible choice. Like it's someone, he's very Joe Clark. I mean, you got to remember, I'm not quite old enough to remember much of his political tenure, but he's always very struck me as like a common sense, sort of middle of the road, get the job done type of guy. And it's not, it's funny because I actually really like the idea of, like an Indigenous appointment to a vice regal, although that's a very strange can of worms to open, considering our representative of the monarch is an Indigenous person.
Yeah, it would be a complicated.
But I also feel like that would be a wonderful step towards Canada's reconciliation.
Totally.
And towards, our sovereignty as a nation, quite frankly. Joe Clark's not a bad choice.
You know what you maybe do, and you make a great point. I think the idea of, like, people will talk, Canada's history of colonialism, et cetera, and you would say Indigenous representation here as Governor General may be a complicated situation. Who should make that decision is the candidate, right?
Yeah.
So you approach someone like, for example, we'll find out what Max has to say here, but someone like Perry Bellegarde, and you might say, might you see this as a conflict, or might you see this as an opportunity where you could impact serious change?
And that's just it, right? Because if you were to bring in someone like Perry Bellegarde, I totally believe that he will actually use it to move some policy changes and to actually change
as much
Canada's
as you could.
colonial relationship.
As much as you could. Like, it's also really, people will say the role of the Governor General is to kind of stay out of the news to a certain degree, follow a script, and represent the Queen. Let's get to Max. Max Fawcett,
just logging in.
Been on
right
this
now.
program. Okay, perfect. So we'll get to him in just a second. Yeah. Max you've read his pieces all over the place. Globe and Mail, Maclean's. Where else have we read him? National Observer here, obviously. The Walrus. Max has been on the show before, making his return on the heels of his piece for Canada's National Observer at nationalobserver.com. After Payette, the affable Joe Clark may be just the unifying Governor General we need. Good morning to you, my man. The beard is filling in quite nicely. I only get to see you in snippets every couple of months. It works.
Yeah, it's coming in. There's a bit of salt and pepper in there now. So it's one good thing about COVID, I'm finding.
Yeah, with that comes credibility on the front of political commentary. You get a little salt and pepper in your beard. People don't treat you like a kid, right? Hey, Max, you've made a bit of a short list here. We were kind of running through some of the names that you dropped. Katie Lang is intriguing. You mentioned, maybe Beverly McLaughlin, former Chief Justice, of course, well known to Albertans. Maybe Assembly of First Nations National Chief Perry Bellegarde. Before we get into why you think Joe Clark is the choice, why you've settled on him, why don't we start with some of the others? Beverly McLaughlin, I think, would fit the role for. I've heard her name all over the place. A number of things qualify her. What do you like about her, but why wasn't she your final choice?
Well, I mean, she's an amazingly talented Canadian. Understands how power works in Ottawa, is familiar with the institutions that she would have to be representing. And I mean, there would be no concerns about her background, no concerns about her, how she treats her colleagues, because, she's been in the public eye for so long. So, I think she would be a good choice. I just don't think she would address the problem that I am trying to address here with Joe Clark, which is that, we have this obvious rift in Confederation. Western Canadians, I got a lot of heat on this because people in BC said, hey, hold on, we're not alienated, and fair enough. But Albertans and Saskatchewanians are upset. They feel like the rest of the country is not honoring their contributions to Confederation. And whether we think separatism is silly or not, this train could leave the station without us being ready for it. So this is an opportunity to put someone in place who can do some deep listening, who can maybe bring the two sides back together and heal the Canadian family. And I think that's an important job right now.
So I'm always so tempted. Every time I talk to you, I'm tempted to. I want to. Every time I talk to you, I want to sort of like swerve off. Like you've just brought up Western alienation, and people in Alberta and Saskatchewan are upset because they don't feel respected. And my brain is saying to me, stay focused on the interview. Stay focused on what you're supposed to talk about. But I'm so tempted to talk to you about that. You know, we talked to Jay Hill on the show just a couple of days ago, leader of the Maverick Party. That was a wild ride.
You asked one of my questions.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. About if your question, if I remember correctly, was about if provinces had I may be misusing the word, but the sovereignty or the sovereign ability to dictate their own movement of natural resources, would Alberta really want BC calling the shots when it comes to access? Right. That's basically what you were assuming, what you were putting out there. Yeah. Which
I mean,
pretty good point.
We all can look at this issue and see the silliness in it, but underneath it, there's a really interesting piece in the New York Times about how the QAnon people reacted to Trump not getting, not being inaugurated last week, and the reporter basically said underneath all of these conspiracy theories was a deep sense of hurt and alienation. And I think, and I'm not comparing Western separatists to QAnon, although there definitely is probably a bit of overlap, but underneath their bad ideas are some legitimate feelings of hurt. And I think the rest of the country has kind of scoffed and overlooked that for a little bit too long. Even Albertans within Alberta can be a bit dismissive of it. And I think so we set aside the bad ideas, we focus on the hurt and try to understand where it's coming from. And that's a thing that a governor general could do. That is literally a role, a position that they could undertake in their time.
I promise I'll get back to talking about the governor general appointment in just a minute. It is undeniable that Western Canadians, specifically in Alberta, paid high amounts of income tax. I'd be so careful how I word this, because I think a lot of people have a real misunderstanding about Alberta striking checks to pay for Quebec's daycare, and that's just not the case. Or withholding equalization payments. That's not a thing. It's called not paying your income taxes. And if you don't pay your income taxes, there are consequences. So people are free to do that and free to deal with the consequences. People are hurting. People are hurting in Western Canada like they're not accustomed to hurting, because employment numbers have been strong. Income has topped the charts, has topped the nation. And people are not used to that. And I do not discount that at all. At all. I mean, their domestic violence is up. Rates of crime are up. Suicides are up. Drug and alcohol use is up. It's horrible. It's terrible. And people are hurting. But what exactly are people, when Premier Jason Kenney talks about a fair deal, for example, to whip people into a frenzy, what exactly is he looking for, aside from things like buying a pipeline, committing hundreds of millions of dollars to remediating orphan wells, committing hundreds of millions of dollars to training initiatives and diversification initiatives? And I know I might be preaching to the choir here, and I'm trying to do it with utmost sensitivity, but what exactly do you think a governor general could do, aside from being from Western Canada, to actually address this at all in any meaningful fashion?
I mean, the funny thing is the governor general could do just as much as the premier or the prime minister right now in terms of the solutions that Jason Kenney has put forward. Changing equalization does nothing for Alberta. Unless the economy here continues to collapse, we'll never see a penny of that, no matter how they change the details of that program. I asked my Twitter followers, specifically the conservative ones, the other day, because people are upset about how Prime Minister Trudeau responded to the cancellation of Keystone. What did you want him to do? Be specific. What was the thing that you wanted him to do that he didn't do? And the best answers I got were around, he should have said better words. He should have he should have empathized more with our pain. And I do think there is something to that, that I think Albertans want to be heard and listened to. They want to know that people in Ottawa, people in Toronto, people in Eastern Canada understand that they've worked hard and understand that they would like some support. And, the problem here is that we have a premier who feeds their fears. He feeds their misunderstanding of what is causing job losses in this province and what is causing the shift in the economic landscape. And he blames, the government in Ottawa rather than global economic factors that are well beyond any of our control. So, what we need are politicians who will tell the truth to Albertans and hear them out. And if Jason Kenney's not going to do that, maybe the Governor General can.
Katie Lang, pros and cons.
I mean, the pro is that she's awesome. I can only imagine what would happen to Rideau Hall if she lived there. We'd have these great concerts probably.
If she would sing Hallelujah at any point, I'm in.
Yeah. No, I think it would give a little bit of a, like the way Adrienne Clarkson gave a bit of a kind of rock star vibe to Rideau Hall. I think Katie would do the same. I find it hard to believe that she would be interested in the job. There's too many boring ceremonies, too many sort of stuffy, basically colonial attachments for her to be the one, carrying forward.
Yeah. Sam was making a good point when it comes to National Chief Perry Bellegarde, who I think would be phenomenal. That a lot of people, I think, would perceive this to be somewhat of a conflict with regards to, the colonialism that would come with a meaningful exploration of the history of the monarchy, the history of Canada. But ultimately, I guess my gut tells me that should be up to someone like Perry Bellegarde to decide, not the general public. You want to dig into that?
Yeah, I think that it is a really interesting question. I would love to see an exploration of replacing the Governor General as an institution with something that represents our Indigenous heritage and our Indigenous leadership in this country. I think that is, you want to talk about reconciliation, that would be a step in that direction. Not just ceremonial purposes, but actual constitutional power given to some sort of Indigenous representative in this country. I think that would be a wonderful statement about where we want to go as a country. I'm not sure it's a statement that the current Prime Minister can make in a minority parliament. I think it would be too fraught. And I think he, quite frankly, has COVID and all these other things that are sort of top of mind for him, that getting into a constitutional conversation like we had in the 1980s, I just don't think would be palatable. But would I love to see Joe Clark be the last non-Indigenous Governor General? Absolutely. I think having that conversation about changing our institutions to reflect that part of our country and our national family it's long overdue.
Two Beaver, who I know to be Indigenous based on their correspondence with the show, says not Perry Bellegarde by any means. He's an assimilated sellout, that guy. Interesting. Unseen Stranger says Joe Clark would be a good safe choice, but even he would prefer someone else. Chris, this is interesting from Chris Henderson, wondering about Edmonton's mayor, Don Iveson, who is not seeking re-election in the fall. Shal's wondering about Kim Campbell, former PM. This is interesting. Shal says not another gray-haired white guy. It actually, the recent history of the Governor General has, with exception of I can think of one, I think in the last 5, right? I don't think there's been a bunch of gray-haired white guys, but I'm not going to argue for gray-haired white guys. Many people are saying, with regards to your suggestion of Joe Clark, it should not be someone who at any point has had a partisan political connection or has held elected office at any time.
Yeah, I heard that critique from Ken Bosencool the other day, who basically said that it would taint the institution, and we need to protect the sort of spheres of partisan and nonpartisan involvement. I mean, I guess my response to that would be that we had a Governor General named Raina Titian in the 1980s who was an elected member of Parliament, and he was one of the best Governor Generals we ever had. So I don't think I buy the idea that former elected officials can't fulfill this role. I think if anything, they would understand the importance of it, the status that it has in our constitutional architecture, And look, I'd love to see Kim Campbell back in the spotlight. I think she's fantastic. And, for the same, she might fulfill the same sort of broad purpose of addressing Western alienation as Joe Clark. I just think Joe Clark would be better at it. Notwithstanding his old white guyness, which I acknowledge, he has skills that not many Canadians have. He has a history that almost no Canadian has. He has a relationship with the Trudeaus. He knows how to work with them, and he understands the West, and particularly Alberta, in a way that someone 20 or 30 years younger than him might not understand. So, there's going to be some hair on every name that we put forward here. But
how important is the choice, Max, for Justin Trudeau? A lot of people are saying the scuttlebutt around Julie Payette was well known. If you asked anybody in Ottawa about what she was like to work with and why previous roles that she had held had come to an end, whether they were rumors or innuendo or otherwise. How important is it with regards to restoring trust for the Prime Minister to make a good choice here? It sounds like an obvious question, but why don't you answer it?
I honestly don't think it's that important. I don't think most Canadians know anything about this or care much about it. I mean, COVID is top of mind for everyone. We want to know when we're getting vaccinated, when we can get back to our old lives, and who's living in Rideau Hall or who the Governor General is just isn't, I think, of consequence to people outside the political game. His choice here, I think, reflects a pattern of this government of really falling in love with an image and letting that drive the conversation rather than maybe doing their homework. It's hard to find me saying nice things about the Harper government, but they did a very good job of setting up a system where we selected our governor generals and our lieutenant governors, and it wasn't partisan, it wasn't political. We picked good people. We should go back to that. But in the interim, a safe choice might be the best play for him here, to get this taken care of and then move on to the things that really matter, which, like I said, are getting those vaccines in people's arms as quickly as possible.
Tanya's watching. She says, I don't know if I buy a governor general having a unifying role, but it is an important pick in a polarized parliament. Tanya says, think coalitions, minority governments, and the like. You can read Max Fawcett's great work at nationalobserver.com. His piece on Joe Clark as his pick for Governor General. It's great to see you again on the show, pal, and thanks so much for making time for us.
Thanks for having me on anytime, Ryan.
Yeah, you bet. A reminder here that, this show is on the air because of the support of our amazing partners like the teams at Dairy Queen of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park at their 6 locations. You'll be able to get Dilly Bar boxes, the boxes of 6, 2 for 1 right now. 2 for 1 on Dairy Queen Dilly Bar boxes at Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park locations of Dairy Queen. And they've got the dairy-free Dilly Bars, too. So, kids, if you're watching Real Talk and you want a Dilly Bar and mom and dad say, remember, you're lactose intolerant, you say, The Real Talk is they're dairy-free, mom and dad. And you can thank me later. The team at Friesen Brothers so excited to have March 5th circled on their calendar. That's when they are opening their 15th Alberta store just off the Anthony Henday, right here in Alberta's capital city. In the city of Edmonton, their Rabbit Hill location will open March 5th and will transform the grocery game. We're so excited as a family to check it out, and you will be too. They're going to have craft beer on tap there at the grocery store. I've been waiting to see Sam Brooks' facial expression when I dropped that bomb. They've got a grill. You can go pick up fresh burgers. They've got the fireplace there. You want pizza right out of the oven, pizza and craft beer while your partner does the grocery shopping? March 5th. Circle your calendars. Our next guest is very excited about that as well. She's the brilliant mind, the creative spirit behind KarriSkelton.com. She also happens to be my beautiful bride, making her Real Talk debut this morning. Baby, welcome to the show.
Thanks, babe. How's it going?
Oh, I'm doing all right, thanks. Morning's in full swing. And, of course, you're doing your thing. KarriSkelton.com is where people can check out where you do your work. You're you and I, one of the things we do together, I've never tried to hide it. We watch The Bachelor and The Bachelorette together. And big news involving one of the places we love to vacation most. Bring us up to speed on the rumor and then the confirmation that happened yesterday.
Yeah, Yeah, so there was a rumor going around yesterday. Suddenly we found out that the Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge had just closed all their bookings for 9 weeks between February and April. And everybody's going, what the heck is going on? Like, we wanted to pop out. There's only so many places you can go right now in COVID. That was an option for us. And now, what's happening? When you start to think about it, you're like, okay, well, what celebrity, what show would need to block off that amount of rooms or that hotel for that amount of time? Immediately, I mean, you sent me the link. I'm like, oh, it's totally The Bachelor, Bachelorette. They filmed for 6 weeks. So if you think about it in COVID times when filming The Bachelor, you're going to need a little bit of extra time because all of the contestants need to quarantine first. You probably have a week of preparation. So that takes care of the 9 weeks. And then later on in the day, the National Post coming out and saying, yes, they did receive confirmation that that is the reason why the hotel is going to be closed to all the rest of us for that period of time.
Okay, so
it's
why?
kind of exciting.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's amazing. There's a lot of spin-offs here with regards to the Fairmont putting a lot of people back to work, people that had been laid off, and obviously it's going to be a big infusion of cash. On the flip side, a lot of people are ticked off that the reservations were canceled, and the JPL, I'm sure, is going to have to smooth the waters there. But why Canada? Why do you think they're coming to Canada? You have a theory here.
I do have a theory. I've been a Bachelorette detective for 20 seasons. Proud to say. And the true Bachelor Nation fans will know what I mean. We investigate the show. You know this, babe. We'll pause the show, try to figure out who the winner is as they're going along. So I was like, hey, why are they doing this in Canada? What's the deal here? There is a Canadian contestant on the current season of The Bachelor right now. She is a fan favorite. Her name is Serena Pitt. She's from Toronto. I'm thinking, okay, if they're filming in Canada, maybe it's because the next contestant, there she is, and she's amazing, is going to be the next Bachelorette. That season of The Bachelor is already done filming. So now they're in the planning stages and the pitching stages of trying to figure out, okay, who's our next star going to be? And typically it's a contestant from the previous season. So to me, it just makes sense that they would, that's why they're shooting in Canada, because she's our next Bachelorette. And I think she'd be perfect.
Okay, so this isn't Bachelorette Canada. This is The Bachelorette, period.
Well, I don't know, but I'm thinking
Okay.
that it is like the American version of the show. Yeah. For sure.
So I mean, not that it matters to the JPL, not that it matters to Jasper. You just wonder about the exposure. Like if it's the big deal show, then more exposure. I'm just imagining, like, we've been on the property many times. Anybody that's been out there, I mean, it's perfect with regards to some of the activities and how they produce these shows, right? You've got sleigh rides and snowshoeing and cross-country skiing and all kinds. I mean, what an amazing opportunity to showcase that crown jewel.
Exactly. And I mean, typically for those that are unfamiliar with the way that the show works, typically they're flying all over the world. But now with COVID, they're still filming the show. So they're picking one location for the entire show to happen at. So they've been in the last 2 seasons with Tayshia and with Matt, they've been doing them at just one resort. So the JPL is perfect for that. Everybody's going to have their own cabins. The star of the show is going to have her own cabin. There's so much to do. A lot of people questioning, like, why winter? But it's, quintessential winter magic at the Jasper Park Lodge. So I think it's the perfect location. I know there's people that are upset. I totally get it. A lot of people had bookings. They were canceled. But you have to think from the JPL perspective, like, you don't say no to that opportunity.
Well, and I was thinking that you've got assuming, and I don't mean to come across as sexist here, but we've got, typically, let's say the guys are making the plans, let's say, for like Valentine's Day or belated Valentine's Day. There are thousands of opportunities right now for fellas to get in touch with their significant others and say, I was taking surprise. I was taking you I had actually booked this unbelievable cabin. Like
the Ridgeline cabin.
Babe, we had a Ridgeline cabin. I was stretching. I've been putting away for a year. But unfortunately, our reservation was canceled, so I'm not going to be able to take you there.
So if your spouse comes to you with that, you ask to see the email confirmation, just to double check.
What?
Yes, you do.
Where's the romance in that? There's no romance in asking to see the email confirmation. That's. Thank you for your detective work, my beautiful love, and we will see you back on Real Talk, I'm sure, very soon.
Yeah. Love ya.
Love you too. You can follow Kari Skelton on Instagram, on Twitter. You can find her on Facebook. And, of course, you can check out what she does at KariSkelton.com. Sam, let's take a look at what's going on in the news this morning. Here's a look at the headlines. Just took a quick look at the Real Talk live chat. It is going off right now. Jess says, how about that chemistry between Jespo and the guest? Yeah, not bad. Not bad after 14 years. Not bad. Pfizer and BioNTech is pushing Health Canada to amend this vaccine label. So the maker, the researchers behind the vaccine, the manufacturers are saying, listen, we need to formally recognize that each vial contains 6 doses as opposed to 5. It would allow Pfizer to send fewer vials to Canada, but of course this could complicate the vaccination program. I really know nothing about this except for there's red flags going up everywhere. We've been sending you 5, but really it's 6. Pfizer submitted the request to Health Canada late last week to amend the vaccine label. The company's contract with Canada is based on delivering doses rather than delivering a number of vials. They say this is our opportunity to minimize vaccine wastage and enable the most efficient use of the vaccine. As you might imagine, there's stories all around the world here of countries competing, and in this case, even provinces, for access to these vaccines, and we haven't even got to the general public yet. Somebody's going to make a hell of a movie about this one day. As mentioned with Max Fawcett, complaints around the conduct of former Governor General Julie Payette are now including this per, by the way, an independent probe into the allegations of a toxic workplace at Rideau Hall, are claiming that Governor General Julie Payette's verbal harassment crossed over into instances of physical contact. This being reported today by the CBC. These reported in testimony given to Quintet Consulting. They will be included in this final report. Several sources with direct knowledge telling the CBC that Payette's workplace behavior went beyond screaming, beyond publicly humiliating people, including unwelcomed physical contact that caused some participants to feel threatened. And how about this? This is an interesting twist from one of the biggest brands in the world at the biggest spectacle in the world. When you think of Super Bowl advertising, you think of Budweiser, you think of their Clydesdales, right? Well, for the first time in almost 30 years, the first time since 1983, Budweiser will not be running a commercial during the Super Bowl. Instead of paying the money to air a Super Bowl ad, Budweiser says, by way of Anheuser-Busch, it's going to donate its advertising dollars to the Ad Council and COVID Collaborative to raise awareness of COVID-19 vaccines. Interesting. Now, Budweiser, of course, did still put an ad together. They're airing it. It's going to be airing this ad in the week leading up to the game. All the Budweiser, masters of marketing. Here we are talking about them for 2 minutes, but it's an interesting story. Of course, the Kansas City Chiefs, Tampa Bay Buccaneers will be facing off just a couple of days ago on Monday of this week. Budweiser posted online its ad called Bigger Picture, which showcases inspiring and heroic stories from the past year during this COVID-19 pandemic. So there you go. Interesting move by Budweiser to get people talking. We're going to be talking mental health in just a moment. Also wanted to remind you that earlier, it was yesterday, we started talking about whether or not churches should pay taxes. Sam Brooks, the producer of this show, do you remember? I'm actually having a total blank slate memory moment here. What got us into talking about whether or not churches should pay taxes? It was someone on the live chat will bail us out here, and they'll this from Neil, put the vaccine in the Budweiser and bam, everybody's vaccinated. That's a great point, actually. Heidi says, I think they're not allowed to say there's 6 doses because it's difficult to get the full 6 doses out of a vial. But if they operate as though there are 6, they'll come up short too often. Heidi's probably bang on that. I don't remember what it was that got us talking about whether or not churches should pay taxes. But we did start talking about it, and it did sort of light a fire, so to speak. And so I thought that I would put it out on my Twitter just with regards to an unscientific, this is not Y Station that's managing this, okay? This is not a scientific poll. This is not in front of the Real Talk panel, so to speak. But Sam, we can take a look at this here. I'll just bring it up on my screen here. So I put this out. We still, as you can see, have about 5 hours left on this, so you still have time to chime in. But we asked you, basically, should churches, and I said et cetera, I'm talking mosques, synagogues, let's just say houses of worship. And you'll say, well, what about my tiny little church in Glendon? Or what about the massive mega church in South Calgary? Yeah, there's got to be nuance to the discussion, for sure. But generally speaking, do you believe that churches, etc., let's say houses of worship in Canada, should be taxed? As you can see here, about 5,400 votes, 5,385 votes right now with 5 hours left. 82% of respondents say, heck yeah. And then another 10% say, well, that depends. And so in theory, you could argue that up to 92% of people think churches should pay taxes. And we've got some really interesting comments here. And I want to get to some of these. Sam, if you can put that back on the screen, check this out. Like, people are asking questions, very fair questions. I always love if you throw in a GIF. There you go, too, right? Like, love that from Amy. Scream it from the rooftops, says Amy. MD Lopez, well, do unions get taxed? Are they tax exempt? Says, I'm just wondering, because if churches and unions can use funds to donate to political organizations, they should both be taxed. Also, if they're transferring funds to international organizations, that's an interesting point. We had some people pointing out yesterday that political memberships have been handed out at prayer breakfasts at their places, so that was an interesting point. Let me get into something else, by the way. Let me get into, touch on something quickly on the fly. Or do we have our panel ready to go here, Sam? Okay, so I'm going to get to our panel in a second. Amy's here. If you can put this back up on the screen, Sam. I want to point something out real quick, and I'm just going to do this quick. I'm not doing this to showcase Amy, but I want to touch on something. A lot of people are filling in the blank on these Jason Kenney photos. See this? Because he broke the politician's code, and he posted a photo of him holding a sign. And you never do that as a politician or a public figure, because people will do this. They'll Photoshop in different signs and have you holding them up. I only say this, and I'm not making Amy feel bad. I just wanted to say the reason a lot of you were putting me on those, or you were putting Real Talk RJ, the hashtag, or you're saying listen to Real Talk. Premier Kenney wants you to watch Real Talk. I did think that was funny, and I did appreciate it. The only thing is, and I think it's worth mentioning to all Real Talkers, that the original sign that Jason Kenney's holding up is around Holocaust remembrance. And I just happened to see it when he first posted it. And so I just wanted for everybody to kind of pump the brakes a little bit on that. I get that it's funny to have photos of Jason Kenney holding up signs that are, pictures of Devin Dreeshen with his Make America Great Again hat on at Trump's, celebrations and things like that. And I've had a bit of a chuckle at watching some of them. However, in this case, just to be better humans as a collective, I think that we should pump the brakes on that photo in particular. It is around Holocaust remembrance, and I would hate to have that being used against each of you. I know that you're doing it in the right spirit. I know you're not aware of what that was, but sometimes here, that's why we tune into this show. Sometimes because whether it's me or Sam or somebody else is going to say, hey, a quick heads up, and then we're all going to be better for it. So there you go. Let's say hello to our roundtable. I'm really looking forward to this. Of course, tomorrow is Bell Let's Talk Day. We wanted to reach out to 3 experts, some with lived experience in mental health. Look at that. My man Chris Johnson is trying to find the best way to center himself in his shot. There we go. Chris, we need to see your beautiful face. My man, welcome to Real Talk. Chris is an official friend of Bell Let's Talk. He's a tradesperson turned mental health advocate through his social media outreach at CJ Beats Ipolar. Chris seeks to encourage people, traditionally men in traditionally masculine industries, to find their voices and speak up about their mental health. Chris, welcome to the show. Really happy to have you here.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. Also wanted to give a huge welcome to Ian Rabb, who's joining us, an interventionist with Edgewood Health Network. Ian's got powerful personal stories about mental health, addiction, and he's got a ton of experience working with governments and different groups across the country to find supports for people that need the most, based out of Winnipeg. Ian, welcome to Real Talk. Thanks for being here. We've got you on mute, Ian, but I'll get you to figure that out real quick. No problem. We want to hear what you have to say. Dr. Speranza Dolgetta is the medical director at Sandstone Addictions Treatment Center in Calgary. Doctor, thanks for making time for us, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Dr. Dolgetta, why don't we begin with you? We want to leave this roundtable as free-flowing and as open and really, quite frankly, as much of a naturally developing conversation as possible. So I want to ensure the three of you to jump in, to build on what each other has to say. But as the nation will focus on mental health this week as part of this corporate initiative that has proven to be very successful in getting people talking and in raising money, oftentimes we find that that some issues don't see the sunlight that they need. They're not in the spotlight. Where do we need to be focusing on when we talk about meaningful mental health initiatives in Canada?
Yeah, I think we need to be starting from the bottom up, right? We often start at the top and start talking about all these big ways that we can make a difference, when really we need to start at the bottom. We need to start with initiatives that normalize negative emotion, right? That make it okay to feel negative emotions and then to talk about it rather than pathologize it right away.
How about you, Ian? Where does conversation need to begin?
Well, I think we've begun the conversation. I think we're about 10 years too late, and I think we have a lot more to do. Personally, I have been active since, because of my own recovery and my own troubles. I've been active in this world for about almost 20 years now. And we are not moving quick enough. The stigma still associated with mental health and addiction is still very real. We see across the country, and I could go province by province and give you statistics, but there is not enough access to mental health and addiction services across the country. I work for and I belong to a provider that provides private services, both mental health and addiction, inpatient and outpatient. But really, it's very hard for people to get access to the services they need. I was very fortunate 20 years ago that I was brought back from the United States, but I had been living in the United States. I was a doctor. I'd lost everything to drugs and alcohol and mental health issues, ended up on the street, and came back and started advocating when I started realizing there are not enough voices speaking loudly around this topic. It is not sexy for government to talk about. They do not invest, in my opinion, what's necessary to invest. And we've got a lot of work ahead. We have as much work ahead of us as we've put into this point.
Ian, I'm looking forward to digging into that a little bit further. I want to get Chris an opportunity to explain, because Chris, when you and I first met, if I remember correctly, our very first conversation was due to your participation in a documentary, wasn't it, on mental health? Specifically, I think it was in the oil patch. And we had a wonderfully powerful conversation, huge audience response. For people that weren't privy to that conversation, can you tee up how you got involved with all this and why you're sitting here with us on camera today?
Yeah, the reason, first of all, I'd like to thank Ian on his powerful story. That was great. Yeah, basically how I got involved in my mental health outreach is I had a buddy who was a journalist who reached out to me and said that one of his former editors was doing an article for BuzzFeed about the mental health crisis in Alberta's oil industry. And so I was a keynote, or I did an interview with him for that. It was Omar Moalem. I know he's a friend of the show. So did an interview with Omar, and it ended up in that BuzzFeed article. And then kind of from there, Bell Let's Talk got a hold of it, invited me to be a friend, which is basically their official name for their spokespeople for their 2019 campaign. Flew me out to Montreal, did basically the rockstar treatment all day, photo shoots, video filming, stuff like that. And then from there, I was lucky enough that Omar, who had done the BuzzFeed article, was doing this documentary for CBC called Digging in the Dirt, which was focused on mental health in the oil industry in Alberta. And I was lucky enough to be one of 4 people interviewed for that.
Chris, let me cut to the chase. Why is it so important in your mind? I don't want to assume that any question is an obvious one here. Why is it so important to talk about mental health in, as you describe them, traditionally masculine industries or specific even geographic locations like Alberta's oil patch? Why is it so important to hone in or to zero in on that specifically?
It's most important to talk about that because men don't talk about it. Men were brought up with this boys don't cry mentality. And because of that, people don't talk about their mental health, and they're afraid to prioritize themselves over, what it's perceived that they're in charge of. You're in charge of going to work and feeding your family, and, putting yourself ahead is not something that is normal for men. And that's something that I aim to change, is just breaking down that stigma and, you know, allowing it to be normalized to have that conversation as someone that identifies as a male.
How important is this, Dr. Dolgetta, to be specifically identifying some communities, whether it's based on geography, occupation, gender, age, etc.?
Yeah, it's really important, because we definitely do, although it's a global issue, we do see certain populations that are more at risk, right? More at risk for mental illness, more at risk for subsequent suicide attempts, completed suicides. And without the recognition that these groups exist, we can't really funnel the resources appropriately.
So when you're with regards to your involvement at Sandstone, do you see correlation with as we talked about demographic data? If I can just, I think, boil it down to that. Do you see some real correlation numbers that maybe general society's unaware of, that we should be aware of, that might move the ball forward in helping us come to better understanding of what we're dealing with?
Well, what we actually see is that mental illness and addiction doesn't discriminate, right? We have people everywhere from 20 years old to 80 years old come to our facility. And I think that's an important message to send out, because we have this idea of what a mentally ill person looks like or is, or what an addict looks like or is. But the truth is, it could be you, Ryan. It could be me. It could be the person on the street. And so removing those stereotypes is really, really important to understanding mental illness and addiction.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ian.
Well, I was just thinking about about Dr. Dolgetta's response. And I work with, as an interventionist, I work with a lot of upper middle class families. It's very prominent to see the mental health and addiction publicly in families that are of lower income, but it's very prevalent in upper and middle class families, and they have a very difficult time talking about it. It's very interesting. I have worked with thousands of people over the years, and I get calls from parents, and the level of denial and even misunderstanding at their level about what their kids are going through is always so apparent to me. Working with the families is often harder than working with the client that has mental health issues or addictions issues, because they know what's going on. Families are just lost. They are just lost about what to do with their loved ones. Couple that with not enough programs and places to take them, you've got very, very sick families. And when I look at this stuff, I look at the whole family sickness of mental health and addiction. I don't look at the individual identified subject sometimes, because sometimes we have to help the parents and the siblings and the spouses as much as and children, as much as we help those that are mentally ill or have subsequent addiction issues.
I want to read some of the comments here from our Real Talk live chat. And then I'll put it in front of you, the three of you, to respond. So if something jumps out at you, you feel free to reference it. Lauren's watching in. He says he's talking about your story, and he says, these are my favorite types of folks. They've lost everything, and then they come back and they help others. It gives a great deal of credibility. Shauna says, it's almost impossible to see a mental health professional without paying for it. Very few are covered by provincial coverage. Most are private. Paying $140 an hour or more is not feasible for many who need it most. Dorothy says, I'm extremely worried about family mental health with COVID. Families need help, and a lot of times online or virtual counseling isn't a good fit. Terry says kids' mental health is a huge issue as well. I've seen some tough cases lately. We don't have enough resources, says Terry. Some random guy says men are conditioned from a young age that talking about their feelings and talking about their mental health is seen as weak. And the one thing that men can't be is weak.
I think the first thing out of those comments that are really important to acknowledge is, coming out of COVID, we're going to see stuff that I don't think that we're even closely ready or prepared for. I think We have seen already the increase in alcohol and marijuana use and illicit drugs. I mean, I'm working across the country, but in Winnipeg, since last March, I had 53 people die of overdose in my life. And 53 people that I know and families I've worked with. That's a lot of people in less than a year. So I think what's going to come out of COVID, and I think some of your some of the people listening to the show today really get that out of COVID, we're going to see a youth mental health crisis. We're also going to see an adolescent and adult mental health crisis and addiction crises that we are absolutely not ready to handle.
Yeah, and Brian, I have a very large family practice in addition to my work at Sandstone, and since the pandemic started, I cannot even comment on how many people who were just on the precipice of mental illness have just fallen over that cliff, right? The isolation, the disconnection, the lack of resources. And so, my practice went from being about 30% mental health to about 50 or 60% mental health visits over the course of that. Yeah.
So how do you know, oh gosh, sometimes I'll get halfway into a question, then I kind of go, because I was going to say, how do you know that that it's become a problem or that it's become an issue? For many people, it will be obvious to them. It will be apparent to them. And in the all things considered, in the wonderful circumstance, or at least let me say in the encouraging circumstance, they're capable of and able to and have someone that they can reach out to. Dr. Dolgetta, which may very well be you, or maybe a counselor like Dr. Rabb, or maybe it's an advocate like Chris or someone else. Maybe it's a helpline. Maybe it's their next door neighbor, but somebody reaches out. I would imagine that there are many people that are suffering in silence, for some reason in shame, feeling like they don't have those resources. Dr. Dolgetta, I want to ask you specifically in particular, how do you know if that's you? There's very well, chances are, statistics would suggest that there are people watching or listening right now, or that will hear the podcast later today, that are to the point where they should be reaching out.
Yeah. And, I want to reference back to what Chris said earlier. The one cohort that I really enjoy working with is men with mental illness and addiction, because 7 times out of 10 they will present with a physical problem, headaches that just won't go away, abdominal pain that is unexplained. I'll investigate them, there will be nothing. And it's this prolonged process of getting them comfortable, even acknowledging that there may be an emotional issue, or that they might be drinking a little bit too much, or that they might be feeling lonely. Again, all these emotions that everybody feels, that if we are allowed to talk about it, might not escalate to full-blown depression or anxiety disorder. But so, in response to your question, how do you know? Look at these signs within yourself. Are you struggling with a physical issue that apparently has no root cause? Be honest with yourself, reflect, don't be afraid to feel, and don't be afraid to talk about those feelings. It might turn out to be a completely normal emotion, but it might turn out to be the beginning of a downward spiral, right? That we can catch if we're just allowed to talk about it.
Chris, it was I was watching your face, Chris, as I read that comment from the viewer that says, men are conditioned to not talk about mental health. Men are conditioned to portray themselves as weak. That's so important. I would imagine a big part of your advocacy, specifically in the trades or in the oil patch, has probably really seen that as one of the first barriers that a lot of guys have to get past. Am I right?
Absolutely, it is. I find that men, instead of experiencing the emotion of sadness, generally put their negative emotions into anger. And so you'll see a lot of guys that are just angry and pissed right off about things. And it might be, they might be having a bad day, but they also might be having a bad day. And so, that's just, men aren't, and it's like what someone said in the panel earlier, men are not conditioned from childhood to be emotional and vulnerable. And so we learn to put our negative emotions into anger and not sadness. And so that's really one of the first barriers, is being like, are you okay because you're angry? Or are you okay because you got something going on outside of here.
And Chris,
Also,
that's 100% right. We see that at Sandstone all the time in our process groups. You know, we have a bunch of guys who are just angry. They're just mad at the world, at everything, and everything they feel comes out as anger. And it tends to be such a relief for them when they're able to really express what they're feeling in a different way.
Yeah. Ryan, I was going to say very interestingly, sorry for interrupting. You know, I came from a background, an upper middle class family with two parents, married 65 years. I have 4 university degrees. I became a doctor. Like on the outside, you would have never looked at me as someone struggling with mental health and addiction ever. And most people were absolutely shocked in my 30s when I'd hit my bottom and I'd lost everything, that it was me out of my friend group that actually lost everything because I was such a successful and motivated young man. And what I learned is, and I won't tie up too much time here, is that, you know, mental, like especially addiction has nothing to do with drugs and alcohol. It really has to do with the mental health issues that are underneath all of the drugs and alcohol. And there's a reason for it. And we really have to, like, I believe both in mental health and addiction treatment, we have to get to the root cause. And the root cause is very deep, and it often takes years to work through. So, you know, very interestingly, I would have not looked like or appeared to be someone that either became addicted or had mental health issues as a man growing up in a perfectly normal upper middle class family. You know, I didn't fit the mold at all. And much to what Chris is saying, a lot of people don't fit the mold. And that's the one thing that we have to learn about mental health and addiction. It could be your brother, it could be your mother, it could be your father. People are in such denial and they suppress this stuff. They're so ashamed of it. And when I came out publicly around what I've been doing for the last number of years, I had to go to my parents and make sure they were comfortable with me talking about, you know, I was involved in organized crime, I was involved in the sex trade, I had done a bunch of stuff where drugs took.
Ian, I think there we go.
I just had to make sure that that my family was okay with it, and it was very hard on them at first because of the stigma. So we're talking about some stuff that's pretty deep, and I'm telling you, it hasn't changed in 20 years.
Ian, what was it that occurred in your life? You know, you say you don't want to take too much time. I want to reassure all three of you, we've got all the time we need here. So, what was there a moment? Was there that tipping point? Was there something that happened that either turned the tide of your life, but more importantly, and I want to ask Chris the same thing, that influenced you to say, I'm going to start doing interviews, I'm going to start speaking publicly about this, I'm going to basically open up my life as a book for people to read page by page? What was that took you there?
That's a great question. I had an incredible mentor. He was about 82 years old when I met him. And for the first time in my life, he kind of explained what was wrong with me from the time I was a child. So I was living like an imposter. On the inside, I felt one way. On the outside, I looked good. I played high-level sports. I did very well in school. I was part of every committee. I was part of every club. But on the inside, I was dying since the time I was a little boy. I felt consciously separated, disconnected, not a part of, separate from, like my skin didn't fit, like I was an alien in this world. And why I do talk out about this is because when I recognized that my pain was not just in adulthood, that my pain and my addiction started way before the drugs and alcohol, and now I had a solution for it and a way to get through it and get better and share this with other people, I realized that it's really important for people to understand what the real problem is. I was so sick and tired of hearing government after government talk about, oh, now we're in an opiate crisis. Now we're in a methamphetamine crisis. We've got an alcohol crisis. I was so tired of that nonsense because what we have is a mental health crisis. We don't have a opiate crisis. Opiate is the drug that happens to be prominent right now, but it's not the problem. Opiates are never the problem. Alcohol is not the problem. Marijuana is not the problem. Let's talk about why people use these substances. And I realized I had to become vocal. And so started getting very vocal about it. I ran in politics, failed, but I ran. I got very public around what we could do to help people around addictions. And I've stayed the course. And now, like I said, I work in the field. I've been working in the field for a number of years. I started a charity that helps people with mental health and addiction. And I'm an interventionist by trade. I'm an interventionist.
Ian, what does that mean? Is that pardon my ignorance? Is that like the show where the person comes home from playing golf and there's 10 people in the room and everything's about to change?
It's very true. So there's a wide range of intervention styles, and I use all of those styles. The one on TV is called Johnson, and it's quite harmful, actually. It can actually cause more trauma for a person that's already traumatized. But I do something called invitational intervention. But yes, I meet with the family, we come together, we write letters, spend about 2 weeks preparing, and then and ultimately invite their loved one into a conversation about what the rest of their life is going to look like.
Doctor,
I've been on Intervention in Canada too, actually.
You've been on the show?
Yeah, I've been on the show.
We could get it. I mean, if we wanted, we could just do a huge swerve and talk about that. I mean, we have all the time in the world here. If you guys want to get in, I've always wondered about the interventions. Like I understand on one hand, I didn't know we were going to talk about this today, but so I've not workshopped what I'm about to say here, Ian. But I will say, on one hand, I can understand why they would be necessary. Like people are just, their lives are out of control, whether it's gambling, drinking, cocaine, whatever. And people love them, and they need to sort of, and they've tried everything else, and again, and I can also see how they might be counterproductive. I always had mixed feelings about people, and I would imagine they had to sign a release at the end of it so it could be aired, but having the intervention be entertainment. I always wondered about that, but it's probably also a big public education standpoint. Where do you land on that? And then I want to ask our other panelists. They didn't know they were going to get asked this, but hey, it's real talk. What's your thought on the idea of that as a television product?
Yeah. So first of all, I'd love to come back and talk to you and have people call in and ask questions.
That'd be cool.
If you ever want to do that, that would be really wonderful, because I think we can help a lot of people. But I'm kind of caught in between the middle. I think the family. So I have put people on intervention when families are at their final hour. They have no money, so they can't send someone to private treatment. I have got them in touch with Intervention Canada, because Intervention Canada will pay for treatment for someone. So a lot of the people you see are people that can't afford treatment. So, and there's no public resources for them. So kudos to Intervention and Intervention Canada for getting involved and having treatment facilities like Sandstone or Edgewood or Bellwood or any of these treatment centers partner with them to bring someone for free. So that's one positive thing that happens from the television show. Yes, we're sensationalizing someone's problems. And when I watch the television show, you've missed about 90% of what happens in the intervention, which is kind of sad. 2 weeks is spent with the family to prepare them. The most important, an interventionist does not do the intervention. It's the family's love that allows people to intervene on someone. It's the family's connection. So you're just a vessel as an interventionist to train and teach a family to start moving in the same direction. The biggest problem with addiction is you got a mom that's mad and a dad that's an enabler and a sister that wants to kill their brother and another brother that won't talk to them. Like, there are so many different relationships in that sick family dynamic that your job as a clinical case manager and interventionist is to come in and get everybody straight. So the TV show does some good things. I think it's great. It's really educated people. Interestingly, I've done over 100 interventions successfully, only one failed. And very interestingly, when you walk in, often people know the intervention is happening. Even they sense it for days before. It's very interesting. Very few will end up in a failed scenario. In most cases, I've had some great success.
Dr. Dolgetta, you worked a ton in addictions and addictions treatment. What's your thought on the method of intervention and then the television show? We should acknowledge it's two different animals, of course.
Yeah. Well, I would echo a lot of what Ian said about it. I do like that they plant mental health and addiction firmly in the context of a person's life and relationships. And that's important, right? It's important to see that recovery happens through a concerted effort of family members and friends and healthcare professionals. I'm not going to lie. It makes me a bit uncomfortable, the sensationalization of it all. And, you know, they cut pieces here, cut pieces there, show people at their worst. So I have mixed feelings, but of course, at the end of the day, getting people into recovery and getting people well is at the forefront. And I do believe that at the end of the day, that's their intention, right? That's their primary motivator. So I'm grateful.
Yeah. Chris, this is when I wanted to circle back, Chris, when we talked about, you know, the decision to open your life up as a book and talk to other people about the challenges that you've faced. And in your case, again, I want to ensure that people know where they can learn more about what you do at cjbeatsbipolar.ca. We can show people actually your website right now. I've got it up, and you simply ask the question, and I love it. There you are in your hard hat, your safety, you got your PPE, and you say, "Hey man, you doing all right?" And it's just like such a ground level approach. I love what you have splashed there across your homepage. What sort of an impact has that had? Like, so what led you to the point where you said, I don't know that you were hiding it or that you were, attempting to appear to be tough and strong. I don't know the specific background there, but what was the tipping point for you? And then what impact has it had with other tradespeople?
With me personally, just going back to what my perception, and I'm just a guy that runs a crane that happens to talk about mental health. With this, with what we've been talking about here, is I think it all comes back to coping strategies and what people develop to take care of themselves. And so, you know, watching TV and being like, oh, well, that person's got a problem and I don't, or drinking or turning to drugs, is all coping mechanisms to try and turn the voices off in your brain, is basically how, as a layman, I put it. Mm-hmm. Going back to your question though, basically I was tired of developing coping strategies in my mind and hit bottom. And I had a relationship fall apart, and I was in my crane, and I was crying, and the people around me didn't feel safe. And so I ended up actually being removed from the project I was working on, which was one of the mega projects that we have here in Alberta, or had anyway. I was removed from that project for 6 weeks and sent to treatment. And luckily I was able to get a psychiatrist and get diagnosed and stuff. And that's a luxury that a lot of people don't get, is to see a doctor or see a psychologist, because of the cost of it and the lack of numbers of it. Like, I had a conversation, I was working retail this last little bit just to make my ends meet. And I had a conversation with someone who was involved in the mental health side of our province's health services. And they were actually being rerouted to COVID tracing, because they were basically like, my boss said mental health has always been the bottom of the ladder, and it still is the bottom of the ladder. So we need to change perspectives everywhere towards it, and make that therapy more open and more available.
Doctor?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say on that note, Chris, I work a lot with WCB, for example, and it is only recently that WCB has really started to pay attention to mental health and to take seriously the notion that a person cannot work because they have major depressive disorder or a generalized anxiety disorder or bipolar. I mean, it was an uphill battle just to get them to realize that these are legitimate issues that, though we might not have, objective lab tests or diagnostic imaging to prove it, really exist and are devastating people's lives and rendering them unable to work.
That's one of my goals with CJ Beats Bipolar, is to get that. I've actually been asked to sit on a panel that's going to develop a strategy to lobby to government to have it put in the OH&S code because of that. In construction, we basically look at things in a 20-year cycle. And so the last 20 years, the focus has been on physical health and getting trained for that and all this sort of stuff. And so we're getting to the point now where, like you say, they're starting to realize that mental health needs to be part of that conversation. And so really, You know, it takes 1 year for something to become a policy. It takes 5 years for it to be implemented. It takes 20 years for it to become a culture. And so we're just at the start of that now. That's a really...
Sorry, Chris, I didn't mean to step on your toes there. My apologies. I'm going to give the mic back in just a second. I just wanted to acknowledge we've got remarkable comments. I took 5 minutes away from our live chat and I checked back in, and it's just amazing some of the things that people are talking about. So I want to point those out. I want to put them in front of our panelists. Very quickly, want to break to quite frankly pay a couple of bills and remind you that when we're talking about holistic health and overall health, a big part of that is, you know, air purification, the air that you're breathing in your home. And we're grateful that Clean Air Club has not only audited our workspace and they've helped us ensure that we have proper circulation in here, but they want to do the exact same thing in your home. So if you go to cleanairclub.ca right now, you sign up, you give them the size of the furnace filter that you need. It's stamped right on the side of the filter that's right there in your furnace. You can see it. If I can find it, you can find it. Trust me. You enter the information at cleanairclub.ca. They drop the filters off at your door. They give you a schedule to stay on. So you ensure that not only do you save money, but you're also on that regular replacement schedule so your family can breathe easy. Find your easy breathing health and wellness at cleanairclub.ca. The team at St. Albert and Sherwood Dodge excited about the 2021 Jeep lineup that includes the fuel-efficient Compass. That's very practical. You've also got that Gladiator that everybody's loving right now. That's a real win in the Jeep lineup. The 7-passenger Jeep Grand Cherokee comes out this year. That's new, and it's going to be big for a lot of families, plus people that just need a little extra room, maybe for the dogs in the back. And then, of course, there's that beautiful Grand Wagoneer, the pinnacle of Jeep performance and luxury. You're not going to find a better Jeep selection than you will at St. Albert and Sherwood Dodge. Go see Scott and his team today. Right now, they can offer 0% financing up to 96 months. Our panelists, Dr. Speranza Dolgetta, Dr. Ian Rabb, and Chris Johnson joining us. I want to get to some of the comments here on our live chat, our real chat, live chat. Heavy D says, people are painting a picture of some of the challenges they face. Heavy D says, you're dealing with going off medications, ideation of suicide, negative voices, and so much more. Mark says, it's a lot easier and cheaper for government to just let mental illness lead to drinking alcohol or consuming drugs so they can assign blame there. Justin says, it's also the public here, though. It's also the public allowing governments to run with a lack of mental health platforms and vilifying addiction.
Sorry for interrupting.
No, you're not.
They will tell you they're doing everything in the world and nothing ever ends up happening. Like the way government talks about this stuff, it's disgusting to me. That's why I tried to run. They will talk about how they're spending millions here and millions there and they're doing this, and you see nothing change at all. Like wait times in public systems haven't changed in 15 years. And yet there's all this more, they drag attention to it, but they don't put their money where their mouth is. One thing they look at is that addicted people and people with mental health issues are not voters. It all comes down to that. And also, I have a firm belief that, when an addict dies, it's one less person. We cost a lot of money to society. And the truth of the matter is, for every dollar spent on mental health and addiction, there's a $12 return. Government is really missing the mark around saving millions and millions or trillions of dollars by not helping people with mental health and addiction. If you think about the services that are necessary around mental health and addiction, corrections, policing, emergency room visits, hospitalization, treatment, theft. I could go on and on around the costs associated with mental health and addiction, and helping people is it should be the number one goal. I don't know when and how, because I've tried absolutely everything, both provincially and federally, to kind of change the mind of government around this stuff. But it's a hard course. It's a hard course. I don't know what the opposition is. I don't know why. I know they spend all their health budgets, so telling them they're going to save money if they do A, B, or C means zero to them. But we really have to have some more specialized services and protections for those with mental health and addiction issues.
Yeah, I want to point out to our listeners or viewers that are just tuning in, Dr. Ian Rabb's chiming in from the province of Manitoba right now. We're getting a cross-provincial perspective here. Dr. Dolgetta, when we talk about government action on addictions treatment, I mean, it's even interesting. It depends on which government, right? For example, you had it here in Alberta, Rachel Notley's NDP government was more inclined to support harm reduction, things like supervised consumption sites. The Jason Kenney United Conservative government is more prioritizing addiction treatment resources, et cetera. I mean, that's a government perspective that I'm sure a lot.
But are they really?
Well, you take it. You tell us. You tell us.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, they say they are, right? But then they go and close down one of our most important safe consumption sites. And to have that tunnel vision that there is only one way to treat addiction, there is only one way to overcome addiction is doing a huge disservice. And part of the problem is, as a physician, physicians pay a lot of attention to prevention, right? Because prevention saves money. It's an upfront cost that you put in, but it saves money. And we're not doing enough around education. We're not talking enough about this at the right time to catch it before it becomes a huge problem, right?
So what would doing enough look like? Like what would tangible, doable policy, and I don't even want to say policy, what would the playbook, we'll run the gamut here. So Speranza, we'll start with you. Dr. Dolgetta, what's one thing that we should start doing right now?
One thing we should start doing right now is educating, but educating in a real way, right? You're not a 16-year-old. You're never going to get that person to not want to experiment with drugs and alcohol. You're never, so demonizing it from the beginning or making, mental health the subject matter of moral right and wrong is absurd. We need to have real conversation about real life issues and do it in a way that is not fear-inducing, that is not judgmental, that is not unreal.
Ian, what's something we should start doing today?
So I'll tell you something, I'll task everyone with this, this experiment. You call and try and get a bed or a bed for addiction, or you call and try and get a mental health appointment today in the public system. Even with Jason Kenney's investment, I know Canada. I'm not only in Manitoba, I work across Canada. Even with the talk of his investment of around more beds, you've still got a 3 or 4 or 5 month wait time to get a bed for someone who needs help with mental health addiction. So what I'll task people with, or I'll task you with, make a few phone calls and see how long it takes you to get an appointment to see a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Or again, find the money to see a psychologist if you're in desperate need. It's not there. So my thing, I think time and money has to be invested immediately. I think that as an interventionist and as someone who works in the industry, the minute someone reaches out, there should be access to something. So right away, put your money where your mouth is. There's a way, I know in the private system, we have beds all the time. We're not 100% full. We're 90% full. There's always a bed available. If government really wanted to make a difference, put your money where your mouth is, work with private companies that do addiction treatment, and fill our beds with people that are in desperate need of help.
Chris, could
I just backtrack for a minute and comment on that?
Sure.
Because a real life example is that here I am in my family practice. And I've got otherwise functional people. They're functioning right at the tip of falling over, but they still have their job, they still have their family, and they come to me and there is clearly a mental health issue, there is an opioid addiction, and they need concurrent help. So either they're confronted with these addiction centers that will treat just the addiction, but only after they've detoxed. So they need to go to Renfrew, and our population has grown by how much? And yet the number of detox beds have not changed in the last 15 years. Okay? And so they're coming to me. Now I'm thinking they need a concurrent program. They need something that's going to address both the mental health and the addiction. And that takes me to places like Claire's Home, right? Except that I need a psychiatric referral for them to go. which guess what? Is like a 3 to 5 month wait. This person could be dead by then. And minimally, they're going to lose their job. They're going to lose their family. Their addiction's going to worsen. They might take their own life, right? I mean, the resources need to be there in a meaningful way, in the way that we need them, not in the way that the government thinks that we need them.
You're getting I'm sure you can see, but you're getting an ovation there from Dr. Rabb. Chris, if you were to impact policy, first of all, I want to commend you. I've never told you this, Chris, but I was driving north on Gateway Boulevard in Edmonton, right by the iconic model Stanley Cup outside of United Cycle, and I looked to my right, and there was a massive billboard with your face on it, and I was like, yeah! I was driving by myself, but I was cheering to see you on there. I was like, my man, as I was driving by the billboard. But like you say, and you undersell yourself. Your humility is what I admire about you. You say, oh, I'm just a crane operator that got into advocating for mental health, but here you are telling us you're working to impact government policy. You're working on task forces and teams behind the scenes. If more of us were to do that as just citizens like you, imagine how better off our world would be. If you were to, with the stroke of a pen right now, enact a law or write policy or allocate $50 million somewhere, or $5 billion somewhere, let's dream big, what would you do?
I think it goes back to what the other two panelists have talked about, where we need immediate action. Like, we can't let mental health go by the wayside and have these wait times that we're talking about. Like, mental health is a right now crisis. Like, it's not, oh, I'm having suicidal thoughts right now, but they'll go away. Don't worry about it. Like, it's something that action is taken on. And so for it to be like, oh, well, don't worry about it. I mean, thing that comes to mind for me right now is a couple weeks ago, I read an article where a man went into an emergency room in Toronto, and the nurses bullied him out of there. He was having problems with his legs, but as soon as his rec chart came up and said, oh, you have bipolar disorder, they bullied him out of there. He crawled out of that emergency room because his mental health was stigmatized by the people that were there to help him. And so between more education on it and just having those resources available in a shorter time frame, those are two things that I feel need to happen. So those are huge.
Yeah, Ryan, I need to hear a justification for why we can have someone go into an emergency department with chest pain, and they're found to have some blocked arteries, not causing the heart attack yet, but it's going to lead there. And that person can be in for an angioplasty within 24 to 48 hours. But somebody going in with a severe addiction that could result in an overdose within the next week has to wait 5 months to get into a program.
Speranza, I have been screaming this tune for years, provincially and through every province and even federally. And it actually is disgusting. I have participated on, I can't tell you, I was on the illicit drug task force federally last year. I was on end homelessness task force. I was on all these task forces, and we come to government with a bunch of recommendations. They said, we need to move quick. Give us about 10 things we need to do. And we give them 10 things, and it takes them 17 months to even look at which one of those things they can implement immediately. Like, give the system to people like Dr. Dolgetta and me and Chris, and I'll tell you, we'll make things happen right away. Give us a bank account. We'll tell you what's needed, and we'll make it happen. The problem is, and I don't know if it's government or bureaucracy, I don't know where the block is, but we definitely have a problem between, I say always, between the heart and the head. I'm the heart, government or policymakers are the head. And there's just this disconnect that this isn't important. I love your example, Speranza. I use it all the time.
I want to be...
Why?
Ian, I don't mean to cut you off there. Let me just say, I don't think it's inappropriate for me to point out that statistically speaking, mental health will impact more people than anything else ever will that gleans the headlines and gets a lot of the funding. So let me qualify to say, if your wife or your daughter or your mom is currently fighting breast cancer, this is not a shot at breast cancer funding, and we need to fundraise for breast cancer. Like 1 in 7 women will fight breast cancer in her lifetime. 1 in 6 men will fight prostate cancer in his lifetime. 1 in 5 Canadians will battle a mental health illness or a mental health affliction at some point in their life. In other words, that's 1 person in your household, or 1 person in your apartment, in the apartment next to you, or 4 people in the locker room when you're playing shinny hockey, or 3 women in your book club, or you get the idea. You get the point I'm making. If we were to talk about, I hesitate to bring in employment here, but we get outraged at when a pipeline's canceled at how many jobs are affected. Mental health is affecting 1 in 5 Canadians, and yet here all 3 of you are agreeing that we're not taking it seriously with policy. I don't have a question here. I'm just making a point. It's totally unacceptable.
It is beyond unacceptable.
Absolutely, it is. Just
the number of families that I have to direct around to try and get them help, and the things that we have to do to get them help are outrageous in every province. I mean, thank God. I really want to say, and I do work. I have a charity that houses people post addiction, but now I work in the private system. And I'll tell you one thing that shocked me more than anything when I first opened my detox and treatment center is that middle class families were scrounging to find money to get their loved ones help. I thought everybody thinks that private paid treatment is for the rich. We have this idea based on TV also that only people that can really afford treatment are the ones that are getting their loved ones treated in private healthcare and mental health care centers and addiction centers. But the truth is, middle class people are scrounging daily to find not a little bit of money, to find $20,000 to $40,000. They have remortgaged homes. They will do whatever they can to find help for their loved ones, and that's a failure in the government system, because they're at their end rope, and their loved one finally asked for help, and they absolutely need direction into some kind of private care. So, thank God for companies like I work for, like Edgewood Health Network, that owns Sandstone, and we have treatment centers across the country. And one of the things that we've done, and I'm not promoting here, but I think it's really important to say, in this COVID time, I am so impressed with this company's ability to move to online programs. We have intensive outpatients, 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, one-on-one sessions that are all moved to online services. So beyond people and they're much more affordable. So beyond people that need that actual detox and that actual treatment, for those people that are suffering, there are more reasonable online options that can help them. And we need to have more of that. And government really should be backing us, should be backing all of the private work that we're doing, because we're doing their work.
There are remarkable comments being made on our live chat right now, and I want to encourage people to read those, whether you're watching live right now and you can scroll through, or whether you're listening to our podcast later. Go check out our YouTube channel. You can subscribe to it. You can read these comments. Some amazing testimony there. I don't have time to do it all justice. Jeff Notchtigal is watching the show, and he says, Ian's on the money with what he's talking about. Jeff says, I still probably have PTSD just from trying to figure out how to get help for my family member. He says, this entire conversation 10 years later still makes me unreasonably angry. I know Jeff personally. He is not an angry man. So for him to say this, as a matter of fact, he's one of the most gentle souls I know. He says, I am grinding my teeth right now through this conversation. Now, let me say, we are coming to the top of the clock here. I can't believe how quickly this hour's gone. And I feel like personally, this is not the 3 of you have ignited a fire under us, and you've pointed us in the right direction on a few things, but I don't want to leave people agitated and exasperated and pessimistic and pissed off. So why don't we take this opportunity? Why don't I give each of you a final word here to focus ourselves in the right direction? To walk out of here with something like a mission that we're on today, or whether it's a bit of encouragement or some enlightenment. Chris, I'm going to ask you to go first. What's something you want to leave us with today?
one thing I just want to talk on here a little, going back a little bit, Ryan, is when you talked about these canceled projects and things, and the number 1 in 5. Within my peer group, which is tradespeople, the number is going to be way higher than that. Like the job that I was scheduled to go on starting this year got pushed back to 2022, and now I'm hearing rumors it's been canceled. And so as more and more of my peer group come out of these few plants that are being built, they're going to start struggling, and they're going to start struggling financially, like Dr. Rabb said. And so, I'm not going to lie, I'm scrounging to feed my family right now, let alone, I'm lucky enough that I was able to take care of my addictions myself, but most people can't. And so, people aren't going to find 20 to 40 grand for that. A lot of us are scrounging to feed our families and keep a roof over our kids' heads. So I would argue that your number 1 in 5 is higher, but just to
you think it's more than you, in other words, you're saying it's more prevalent than 1 in 5. You're saying it could be 2 in 5.
Oh, guaranteed.
Right.
Even as high as 1 in 3, 1 in 2. Like, as people's financial situations is a catalyst for, their mental health to debilitate. And so if guys aren't working, like I said, I took a job working outside of my industry just to help and make ends meet. And, it was a drastic pay cut, and, it was hard. But to go back to your asking for a positive message here at the end, I always end my conversations with just letting people know that they're not alone, and that if they have a conversation with someone they trust, be it, a friend, a family member, or phone one of the helplines that has, those people don't know you. They don't have any judgment on you, and just have a conversation. And it's just a huge weight lifted off your shoulders. As soon as that conversation happens, you're just like, you know what? It's out in the air. I know people know now, and I can start my journey to improvement.
Ian, let me ask you next. What's one thing you want to leave us with? Empower us here, my man.
So I want to tell you this. I'm a almost 20-year survivor of methamphetamine use, where I used that drug for 13 years, as well as every other drug and alcohol. And I think what's really important is that we have to leave you with a place where you feel hope. I know if I can get clean and sober and challenge my mental health issues and live as good as I'm living today and have the ability to help people, other people absolutely have that same ability. So 2 things. I want to leave you with hope. There is no completely despairing place you need to be, but you do need help. And I will tell you this, and I'll make this commitment to any of you, that if you want to email me or call me, and I will make sure that Ryan has my number and email. I don't care if you can afford it or you can't afford it. No one in this world should go through this alone. And I really want to tell you something. I mean, I blame my parents for years for my problems, my mom especially. She was never the problem. I give her as much love as I can today because I blamed her. I thought she was whatever, it doesn't matter. That's a whole nother show. But the truth is that we can all come together and solve some of these issues together one at a time. And I'm available to do that. Our family has been reunited, and I get excited from helping people. I love seeing families reunite, and I love seeing like the blues of people's eyes come back when they finally realize they're not alone, as Chris said, and there are opportunities for help out there, and we can find them.
Dr. Dolgetta, we'll give you last word.
Thank you. What I want to say to anyone who is out there struggling, you are not alone. You do not have to do this alone. And for the people that are loving people with addiction and mental health, don't be afraid to talk about it. They are waiting for you to ask them how they're doing. They are waiting for you to reach out. You're not going to offend anybody. You're not going to alienate anyone. We need to treat this as a community issue. And I echo Ian, if you need help, reach out. We're here at Sandstone. I'm here at Riley Park Primary Care Center. We can help. You're not alone.
I'm so grateful that the 3 of you agreed to make time for us today. You have inspired our audience, and in some cases, you've accomplished, I think, something that's difficult to do, which is bringing people together in a common focus. This is not a partisan issue. There's a political element to it. But I think it's something that we can all agree demands to be addressed. And I'm grateful that Chris Johnson and Dr. Ian Rabb and Dr. Speranza Dolgetta have agreed to join us. All of their contact information by way of their Twitter handles is included in the tweet that I sent out around 8:15 this morning. Much love to the three of you, and thank you for this.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
A reminder that tomorrow is Bell Let's Talk Day. We wanted to do this ahead of time. We're not affiliated with it, but obviously proud to support mental health initiatives across the country. We want to hear your stories, and we'll get to more of those, of course, in the days, weeks, months, and we hope years to come. A reminder that the team at Grand Dog Essentials has joined the team of Real Talk Builders, and we're thrilled to have them here. My family's been customers of Grand Dog Essentials for several years now. We trust them with their quality raw food to feed our pups, our Boxer Moses and our Lab Monroe. They've got different options, including beef, chicken, turkey, bison, or tripe. You can check out granddog.ca for all the products available. Plus, their staff, family owned and operated, by the way, certified in raw nutrition, so they can provide you that informed support. Is it the right move for you and your dogs? Are there dietary concerns? They can help you sort it all out. You can find them on Facebook and Instagram at Grand Dog Essentials. And again, at granddog.ca, if you use the discount code REALTALK, you'll get 10% off your first time order. Also excited that Eden Landscaping has joined our family here of Real Talkers. You can find the magic that they do. You want to see some of their projects, landscapeedmonton.ca. They design outdoor living spaces. They want you to make the most of your front and backyards. It might be a smaller project like flower boxes. It might be a total overhaul. Don't go with what your builder gave you. Ramp it up with the team at Eden Landscaping. Again, landscapeedmonton.ca. This next conversation, I ask you to buckle your seatbelts. I have no idea where this is going to go, but what I do know is that I am an absolutely enormous fan of this fella. Before we bring him live on the air, Sam Brooks is like doubled over in laughter right now. Can you roll it? I'm gonna provide some voiceover here without compromising the quality of the product. You remember this? The Calgary Flames Edmonton Oilers matchup last year when everybody was waiting for Zach Kassian to fine tune. Oh, look at the fans are excited, like that guy with his popcorn. Everybody was excited for the tuning that was going to happen when Zach Kassian took on Matthew Tkachuk, the Turtle. And this guy, the crowd, whoa, hey, that popcorn's expensive. So people start getting pretty excited, right? Because this fella's out of nowhere getting the crowd going like nobody else can. So the whole place comes alive. I know because I was there. I'll never forget this moment. And then there he goes, ladies and gentlemen. This is what Cameron Hughes does best. As a matter of fact, this is Cameron Hughes' job. He travels all over the world, literally tossing sweaty T-shirts into crowds of thousands of adoring fans, risking it all. Anybody else getting nervous right here? He gets people going like you wouldn't believe. He's done it in the National Hockey League. He's done it in the National Basketball Association. He's done it at the U.S. Open in front of some of the world's biggest tennis stars. He is the author of King of Cheer, and Cameron Hughes joins us now live on Real Talk. My man! I don't even know where to begin. What do we do?
Let's go. That's the greatest intro I've ever had. Thank you.
People were so worried when you released the video yesterday that I tweeted with all the hockey sweaters and someone, I think somebody said, this guy's going to go into cardiac arrest before the interview if we don't calm him down. Your physical threshold for excitement is like none I've ever seen before.
Well, I wanted to temper it down today. We got to bring things down, and then we bring it up at the right time, as you know, right?
Well, you're a master.
It's all about being the spark at the right time, right?
Yeah. So we're going to talk about the book. We're going to talk about your whole career. You've provided us some early footage of where this all began. I read your book. Thank you for sending me the advanced copy. This all starts kind of back in 1994, right? Can you take us back to the beginning?
Yeah, I'm kind of living in my dad's basement, in and out of university, like as much as Frank the Tank, trying to figure out what to do with my life. My buddy says, hey, do you want to go to the Senators game that night? He had great seats. The team was horrible. And there I am that first night in the aisle, jeans on jeans, as we do in Canada, dancing like a lunatic, no idea what I'm doing. And the crowd's looking at me at first like, what is happening? And then, Ryan, they just came along. They were like, finally, someone had the nerve to get this sleepy, dead, quiet crowd going. Thank you, right? Yeah. And there were no bells and whistles back then, right? Like there are now. And the place went nuts. After the game, a guy from the Senators, a young intern, said, hey, I want your number. I'm like, what for? And he's like, we want to bring you back. And I'm like, what do you want me to do? And here we are.
So you were not a professional at the time. This was just you finding there was just a vacuum in the arena that you needed to fill with some excitement.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was the crazy guy in high school. I didn't make my big sort of thing is I didn't make the high school basketball team. So I went and cheered them on, but I always painted my face. And then I wore a watermelon on my head at university. Shocking. And then I was a mascot for a baseball team in Ottawa. So my whole thing, Ryan, is I took my mask off that night. I just was like, go for it. Nothing to lose. Let's have some fun.
So so the Ottawa Senators, I think if I remember correctly, they offered you tickets to 6 games and they gave you some gear to wear and probably some things to give away. But there's a big chasm that exists between a hockey club giving you a couple of free tickets and now traveling I've run into you in airports. I'm just going to say, I'm going to reveal I have a slight conflict of interest here because I was in Las Vegas last February and I shot you a text and you gave me the key to the city for 3 straight days in Las Vegas. So I was just walking around dropping your name and people were treating me like I was Jay-Z. But so you've got this life where you're flying literally all over the world now doing this. How do you go from A to B?
Well, in 2 words, show up. And I don't mean to say that as a cliche because I did it in Ottawa. They didn't make the playoffs. I showed up in Toronto. I wanted to see if the crowd was different in Ottawa because they weren't that good, the team. And then Toronto was really good in 95, 96. There I am on CBC. They were making fun of me at first, and then they came back and said some nice things. And that was the turning point where I was like, well, if a crowd in Ottawa, Toronto's the same, why not try this in other cities? So I just literally showed up in California. I went on a road trip when I was trying to finish my degree. I showed up at all these events at first, just with my own t-shirts, literally, check this out. Dancing Guy t-shirts.
Oh, wow.
And I would that's from 1995. I brought my own t-shirts. Nobody was throwing t-shirts at the time. There were no t-shirt cannons, nothing like that. I know you've got a great arm yourself.
Thank you.
And then all these teams started to say, wait a minute, maybe this guy would be good at our games. It just kind of happened. And then I got a booking agent who represented all these weird acts. And I was like, what? There's an industry here? This is crazy.
So
my dad's like, what?
But it's a thing. It's undeniable that it's a thing. You've made a great career out of it. What's the secret between you and maybe you don't want to reveal it, Cameron, but the secret between you and all the other, if I can just cut straight to the chase, all the other drunk maniacs in the stands, what's your X factor? What do you have that they don't have?
Well, I think that's really interesting. And ironically, I studied sociology. I think that it's a couple of things. One, I'm sober.
Yeah.
No, but is the timing. It's timing. You know this. You listen to your audience, and you've got to know when to get up and get the crowd going. You've got to know when to let them own it. You've got to know when to join in. You've got to know when to tease them a bit, to push them a bit. And I think the key is timing. And I've learned to study crowds over the years and when to do it and when to hold back. And I think that that's what's allowed me to, continue to do this because teams get it. Teams are always asking me, when should we go? What should we do? And I always want to be that spark at the right time when people need it. I don't know what was going on in that shot.
Can you do what we do the players post game? Can you just take us through this, Cameron? Tell us what's going on. What's going through your head right now?
So, yeah, there's a timeout under 14. The camera comes to me. That's in Vegas. They let you do anything in Vegas. They've got this permission to go crazy. The camera comes to me, and I get up, and I just go nuts. And as you can see, the fans all stand up, and they want to party. There's this permission just to party. I'm just the goofball that's ready to go. I asked the guy beside me to hold my leg or I'm going to fall. I've been hospitalized 8 times, Ryan. It's not healthy.
Literally?
And then I go for the big reveal. And then I just see how quickly I can take off the shirts and I start stripping. My high school guidance counselor's like, I said you could follow your dreams, but I didn't mean you could be a stripper.
What's the most number of T-shirts or jerseys that you've worn at any given time?
I've had 26 T-shirts on at the same time. Here, everyone gets a kiss with their T-shirt.
I can't wait till COVID gets out of here. I cannot wait till this pandemic is over. I am watching this and my heart is full.
It's crazy. Just like people want to. My whole thing, Ryan, is really, it's about connecting people, and you do it in a big way there that you're watching. And then after I do this, I go to sections and I do it on a smaller level of comedy, of banter, of getting kids up, getting adults up, doing the whole thing, getting the fans to be the stars of the show, right?
This is amazing.
Oh,
wow. Cam, how have crowds changed over the years? Because it's funny, like, I work for Oilers Entertainment Group. They've got an award-winning team. Some of the things that they've done at OEG, obviously Vegas does an incredible job. The expectations now with Kraken in Seattle, I mean, is going to be, people are expecting them to just blow the doors off the fan experience. But fans are a little bit, I'm speaking on behalf of only me right now. Fans are a little spoiled right now. Like I see people tweeting like, "Oh, that in-game, that team's in-game program sucks," and I'm like, dude, like 15 years ago, there was nothing. There was nothing at all. How have crowds changed?
Well, I mean, that's a really interesting point, because I started off and there was no jumbotrons, there was no big video boards, there's no game entertainment departments. And now, I truly believe we rely too much on our video boards. I did a game once for a big NHL team, and the director of entertainment came in and said, "Thank God you're here." I'm like, "What do you mean? You've never said that to me?" He's like, "Well, it doesn't matter what I do on the video boards and these fancy videos and edits and cuts. When you get up, the crowd pops." And I think that a lot of it has to do with human interaction. Like when you get on the mic and you're talking, you're hyping the crowd up, and I'm throwing T-shirts out, when there's an element of the human connection, people respond to it. I mean, that's why I've been doing this for 27 years, because there's the human element, you know what I mean? And I think that's a really big part that I think teams have depended so much on the Jumbotron. They've depended way too much on sponsorship. I think there should be a law in sports. You can't do a promo on your video board for more than 60 seconds. Nobody cares, right? So it's about making the fans come alive in that way.
Where are you here, Cameron? Where's this? That Singapore Sevens, that's rugby, yeah? Canada Rugby?
That was unbelievable. That was international rugby. They flew me over. They had no idea what to expect. And it was unbelievable.
Do you have
jumping off the railings and dancing with fans? Security's like, okay, we'll just let him go.
Yeah. He'll wind up in the hospital at some point. Do you have? Yeah. So you've worked.
And this is the moment right here, by the way. This is the greatest moment of my career. Right here.
Oh, okay. Here we go.
Take us through it. In terms of like the most spontaneous human moment, where I'm at Canada Sevens rugby in Vancouver, 30,000 people. It's the end of the day, and then I feel this energy behind me, and I move to the side, and Malcolm, an 18-year-old boy from British Columbia with Down syndrome, just says, "You know what? Move over, pal. I'm going to shake things up."
This is incredible.
This video has 10, 15 million views or something. It's crazy. And he just keeps going. He's just like, "Yeah, I got this. Don't worry." And as you can see, everyone's dressed up. And he's just going for it. And I show this video at all the talks that I do, and I end on it. And it's all about getting out of the way. It's never been about me, really. It's about getting other people to have fun and to let loose. And Malcolm showed us all what true spirit is that night.
This is amazing. I haven't seen this video before. This is incredible. Look at his face.
Yeah.
Look at every single person watching.
Watch this. Is the best. Watch this. He's like, "I got it." He's like, "Oh."
Yeah. That's incredible.
I've Instagrammed with him a few times. We've chatted and we talked once, and I said, "What were you thinking that night?" He said, "The fans wanted me to party with them."
Yes.
And I was like, "Oh my God, thank you." Right?
Do you have any
and
data?
He just keeps going.
Do you have any data of like? I mean, now I'll acknowledge that you've worked. You've worked tennis. You've worked soccer/football. You've worked NBA, NHL. You've worked a ton of different stuff. So I guess I'll have to let me just hone it down to hockey. Do you have data on how soon the home team scores within a Cameron Hughes segment or promo?
Well, a lot of teams have said, what's the return on investment with bringing me in? And I'm like, I don't know. Your fans will have more fun. I did Buffalo Sabres once for 10 games in a row, and they won every game.
Is that right?
And oh yeah, it was crazy. There was like a snowstorm. They're like, we got to get him here. Get him a tractor. 60 at one point I was tracking. It was around 65% of the games that I could track, the team was winning.
Yeah,
65 in there, which is pretty good.
That's phenomenal. A team would take a 65% winning percentage. I don't care if you're who you are, you'll take that. Cam, you said one of our viewers this morning. First of all, like Neil's watching. He says Cameron has been so much fun at Oilers games. I can't wait to get back to a live sporting or music event. I'm trying to find this. Scott says this guy has like the best job in the world. He gets to just have fun and make people laugh. Steve is watching. Says there's nobody in the world like Cameron Hughes. I love this. Some random guy says, who needs alcohol when you're drunk on excitement? I agree. We're coming right. We're coming hot out of a segment on addiction. So my comment about drunk fans was probably fell flat a little bit. But this from AB. AB says, I wonder how Cameron wakes up in the morning. You in your book, you talk, it's not all sunshine and lollipops. It's not all roses for the king of cheer. You've had difficult circumstances. I mean, I think of your mom. I think of your dad. How do you rally?
Yeah, here we go, right? Well, yeah, I mean, when I was 16, came home from school one day. Like I said earlier, I was trying to make the basketball team, and my mother told my sister and I she'd been diagnosed with breast cancer, and she was like, I'm going to beat it. Don't worry. And, it's a longer story, but she had a 2-year battle, and she lost her battle to breast cancer. And, in that moment, you realize, what's important and all those different things. But for me, it was like, that's why I went to the games and started cheering. And that's why I do what I do, in the sense of my mom, Ryan, she was all about connection and heart and real connection. She was a nurse. She truly cared for people. And I truly care for people, so yes, this time, for me alone has been hard because I'm not really connecting with people in that way. But, when I wake up in the morning, I have one mission. How can I put smiles on people's faces? And that was a gift my mom gave me. You're going to get me going here. But and that, it's not always easy, by the way. And it's BS to think that I wake up every day and I'm running down the street and doing cartwheels, but that's my mission every day. What can I do to bring a little smile, a little cheer to you? And, I've had some negative backlash in my life. And at the end of the day, I look at the kids smiling and I'm like, hey, we're good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
You had a challenge getting ready to work a game, with regards to your dad's health. And I can't imagine, let me say this, my situation's not even close to what yours is, and we'll get you to tell, but I'll tell you, you and I have worked together a little bit at Oilers, never
Sure.
together really. We've kind of worked off of one another. You've made my job easy in getting the crowd going and getting the crowd excited, but I'll never forget a phone call that I got last May, right before I was about to go out, and my dad let me know that he'd been diagnosed with Parkinson's, and and I was like on the microphone literally 90 to 120 seconds later, maybe 3 minutes later, and my inside was torn to shreds. And there I am talking about whatever I was talking about and making noise and the loudest fans, and you can compartmentalize a little bit. And to me, I was like, well, I'll work the game for Dad is what I'll do.
Yeah.
How do you wrap your mind around it?
Well, I mean, I think it's we all go to work, we all go to show up in our lives in different circumstances every day with the highs and lows of life. The reality is, but for me, it's like in that 2 to 3 hours, I need to be in the best state possible to give the fans the laughs, the fun. Teams are paying me well now. I travel and I get there and I'm like, okay, I need to be on. And whether you're sick or whether you have personal things that are going on, I somehow find a way. I find a switch, Ryan. And, like you said, that moment and that night for you, I mean, it must have been so hard. And it happened to me. My father had a stroke 5 years ago, and my sister called and said, you got to come home. And I'm like in the hotel room and there's no flights. And I'm supposed to perform for the Minnesota Wild that night. And a friend of mine calls me and he says, you can sit in your hotel room and just wait for the next flight the next morning, or you can go put a smile on 18,000 people's faces. And the Wild said, your family here, you do what you need to do. And you know what I did? I went and did the game. I still have the t-shirt from that night. And I still have the memory of going, you know what? My dad would really have wanted me to do that. And I really believe in that moment and that thought is the cheer you give is the cheer you get. Because when you were about to host, you probably needed that crowd more than you thought, right?
Yeah.
They gave you energy back that allowed you to process what you just happened, the news you just got.
Yeah.
And it helps you,
It's an amazing symbiotic relationship. What I think is one of the things, and I want to be very clear here. You're a legend. I'm not comparing what we do. This is just a conversation. But when I'm getting ready to do something for the Oilers, waiting for that TV timeout, for me, there's a lot of interaction with the fans, right? There's a lot of, what I think is really neat about what you do is that you're the sleeper. Like you're in the crowd. They have no idea what's about to happen, right? And so it's a totally different scenario because for a lot of people, especially people that are seeing you for the first time, you're just some guy. You're like a fan that all of a sudden has come alive. Do you get to a point where fans start to, like where you find in certain cities, like you say the Minnesota Wild organization says to you, you're like family. You've got fans here within the organization, the Oilers organization on our live chat that are referring to you by your first name. You must connect with fan bases in a pretty special way.
Yeah, I mean, after a while, you know, if you don't care after being in a city, Cleveland, there's a good example right there. I did 45 games or 50 in a 4-year span to the point where I had a float in the parade with Machine Gun Kelly, the rapper. And so you create this thing where, if you come into a city for one night and you leave and you never come back, it's obviously different. But yeah, I mean, you care. I genuinely care.
How much popcorn how much popcorn have you spilled over the years, by the way?
I should make a list of the teams that allow me to throw popcorn and the teams that don't. And you'd be like, oh, come on, get over it, right?
Who doesn't? Who is the most? No, I can't. That's it. Because what if I can't? That's a bad question. I'm going to ask it. Who's the most, but it doesn't make sense. The question's a bad question. Who's the most uptight organization to work for? However, if they're too uptight, they're not hiring you. So it's I guess that's kind of a weird question.
Well, I'll answer that question in a different way. I say to them, because every team in hockey and NBA, and I'm really not saying this to brag, but they know who I am. They know what I've done. I've done all-star games. And so I say to them, they're not all going to bring me in. I get that. And I'm totally cool with that, right? At the beginning of my career, I didn't understand rejection. I'm like, what do you mean? Why wouldn't you have me, right?
Yeah.
But I always say to teams, if you're not going to have me, bring in something to do bring your fans alive. Don't just depend on social media posts and boring videos and do something, right? And I think that organizations that have won over a longer period of time that I've watched from minor league teams that keep promoting, keep pushing the experience, they're also winning at the gate. And a lot of them are winning on the ice or the court because they push it.
Cam, I don't know if your camera is fixed right now, but I'm imagining this room that you're in. Can you do a slow twirl? Because I'm seeing the background behind you, and I suspect it doesn't.
Oh, wait, do you have a cardboard cutout of yourself by chance?
No, I do not. Not yet.
That was from the AO Pepsi Canada Go campaign. Yeah, this is my room here.
That is an old school flame sweater.
Yeah.
So everyone
more behind me. See the ones behind me too.
Yeah, of course we do. So these all tell a story.
Yeah, they all tell a story.
Is there as you look around the room right now? What's one that just jumps out at you? What's one sweater or one T-shirt or scarf that's super?
Right there, Belfast Giants. Can you see that one?
Yeah.
So they flew me over. A guy, obviously, he was from Alberta. He was from Calgary. A guy named Todd Kelman. He was the GM of the Belfast Giants. Theo Fleury played there one year during the lockout. And they brought me over, Ryan, and I landed in London, and there was bombs going off in Belfast. Small, not like it used to be. And I get there, and I'm like, what am I doing here? This is crazy. And they were worried about ticket sales, so they had me wear the jersey at a mall handing out tickets. And I got kicked out of the mall. And I'm like, what am I doing here? This is insane. I ended up doing the game. They sat all the fans, the Catholic fans, the Protestant fans together. That's why it's a teal jersey. And I ended up going back over the years and developing an amazing relationship. So that was really cool.
Wow.
First time in Europe.
A couple of my buddies were. I bet you that they were on the Dustin Johnner and Jimmy Vandermeer, Jumbo Vandermeer, both played there. I would imagine if in the last few years you were probably entertaining the crowd that was there cheering for them, that's a small world. That's very cool.
That's, by the way, that's one thing is like you cheer for a lot of the teams. I've done a lot of WHL and CHL across Canada. And I remember having an NHL player now. He's like, comes up to me I was in Minnesota. We were at a store and he's like, hey, I remember you from, I think you played for the Red Deer Rebels, your team. And he's now playing in the NHL. And I'm like, I actually didn't know who he was. And I was like, hey man, he's like, I saw you 10 years ago. And I'm like, oh my God, I've been doing this that long.
So, hey, how have you managed through COVID? Like, I mean, obviously your book is out, which is huge. Where can people get your book anywhere they get good books?
They can get my book through Amazon, my website, CameronHughes.tv. I'll sign it for you. I'll kiss it. I'll send a cheer with it.
Okay.
And all the other bookstores. It's not in bookstores yet, but it will be.
Okay, but people
I'm going to go on a big Canadian tour.
Yeah.
I'm going to Winnebago and across the country.
I can't even imagine the pressure of you. Like, you show up on a book tour. If your book's about like the carbon tax or like the history of Republican politics in the United States, you can show up and If you show up on a book tour, people are expecting you to blow a gasket like every 10 minutes. It's going to be, I don't know how you'd manage that.
That's a lot of pressure you just put in my marketing concepts. But
yeah, well, sorry.
I think that people, at that point, we're going to need that more than ever. Like I always find there's a line, right? And this as a host on two levels, live and what you're doing now. There's that line where fans want to cross. I talk about it in the book about a few areas where I push fans and some people would be so offended by what I did. But in the context, they wanted it, right? So if I'm at a book signing, you just gave me an idea, and I would like take T-shirts and while they're in line, I'd run up and down and get everyone going, do the wave.
Yeah.
Like people want it, right, Ryan? They want it.
Yeah. You must, you're never going to confess to it, but you must need some downtime. Oh, like, look at this. These are like the all-time greats we're looking at. Like,
that was one of the best moments with Federer. Ended up doing I Love New York was one of the best moments ever, buying that T-shirt for $10, and I strip off my last shirt. I'm wearing an I Love New York shirt, and ended up at center court with Novak. And then Roger Federer's agent called me and asked me to come and perform at Federer's charity event with him and Bill Gates. And he's like, oh yeah, and we're going to surprise him. I'm like, what are you talking about?
That's absolutely
so we did
amazing.
And Roger came by my locker room and said, oh, I like watching you at the U.S. Open. And I'm like, I didn't know you had time to watch. So, I mean, I've been lucky, show up, get up. And
I think that, it's amazing that athletes, they approach, obviously, their jobs with great professionalism, so they can never really admit it, but they do pay attention to stuff like this. I was lucky enough to get, Darnell Nurse was kind enough to sign an Oilers sweater for me. And didn't say anything. Just handed him the Sharpie and the sweater, and he writes, Jespo, when do I get my T-shirt? Darnell Nurse. And I was just like, what? Like, what? But to circle back, how have you managed? What's COVID done to you? I mean, the live events business has just absolutely collapsed.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's part of the reason I have this studio now. I'm doing, Zoom meetings. I'm doing some crashes. I'm doing some keynotes. I've done a bit of everything. I've done about 80 personalized videos. And then I went on that website, Memo, where people pay, and nobody's hired me because they all want them for free. You know the deal, right?
Yeah.
I've done so many weird, you know what it is? I'll tell you this, what I learned, I said yes. And I was having Zooms with a guy in Italy because he met me at the US Open. I don't remember him. And next thing I know, like 3 months later, my book comes out and there's a picture of the guy who I randomly had a Zoom with his dad. He's bought a book for his dad. Like, so just saying yes to all these different things has led to, an interesting time and opportunities that I never saw coming. Right.
I love it. We've got like audience members right now are studying the wall behind you, which is no surprise. People are pointing out the Red Deer Rebels sweater. Jay, my pal, is watching. He's a huge basketball fan. He says that NBA All-Star Game jersey. Did you work an NBA All-Star Game?
I did. Yeah. NBA in 2016 in Toronto, which was really cool.
Wow.
And the cardboard cutout is from the AO Canada Go Hockey Canada campaign in 2009 that was a disaster. Yeah. For all your French fans.
There you go. Amazing.
This was in the mail.
You haven't.
I'm going to walk around town with that today.
Yeah, well, I would too. But pose for photos with it yourself. Take it around town like a Where's Waldo kind of thing.
Hey, do you have a lot of Oiler fans that follow you?
We do.
What about this?
Yeah.
I have a brand new Oilers jersey. Do you want to do a giveaway? We can raise some money for charity or a giveaway.
Oh, wow. Sure.
Why don't you and I sign this and we'll do a fun little giveaway?
Do we want to pollute it? But people want you to sign it. I don't know if anybody wants me signing that sweater, but.
Of course they want you signing it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, how are we going to, I'm trying to figure out how we do this to raise money for charity or we just do a giveaway why don't we raise money for charity? How should we do it on the fly? I'll tell you what, how about you cook up an idea like in the next 30 minutes or 60 minutes and push it out on Twitter and then I'll push it out and then we'll figure it out. Because I
love it.
I mean, you're a creative, unless you have an idea right this minute, we can do it live.
I think we should do, if someone wants, you can get people's tweets right now or you can hear what they're saying.
Yeah. Well, people are on our live. People are on our live chat. James says James says he's okay with us signing the sweater. He'd be okay with winning a signed sweater here.
All right. Well, let's just do $300 goes to charity.
$300. Okay. Well, we've already got Chris is bidding $100. Why don't we do? Okay, here's what we're gonna do.
It's, by the way, it's authentic. Look at that thing.
Oh yeah, no, it's a.
Wait! You can smell my sweat.
Yeah, you have to make sure that you're gonna have to promise us you're gonna put it on, run on the treadmill for a little bit. I'll put it on, and then I'll do a thing we call trash talk, which gets me sweating. So then you'll have but see here, then it's COVID, so we're gonna have to spray the whole thing down with Lysol disinfectant too. By
the time it gets to you, you'll be fine.
Yeah, that's true. By the time you get it, it's going to be fine. Dorothy's pointing out, yeah, guys, it's COVID. Heidi says we could do charity on YouTube chats. Okay, I'll tell you what. Sam's got the disinfectant wipes here. Okay, we're going to say a $300 donation to charity takes it. Cameron, you and I will coordinate behind the scenes, and we've got to identify our charity. Is there one that resonates with you? You talked about your mom and breast cancer. You talked about your dad and having a stroke. We've talked about COVID. Why don't you pick?
Well, the mental health's a big thing right now, and that's a big thing tomorrow with Bell Let's Talk. So, do you want to do something around that?
Yes, let's do that. Why don't we do that? And why don't we do?
You tell me.
Okay, there's a group in Edmonton called Momentum Counseling that offers free or pay as you can mental health counseling. So why don't we take the top donation to this? We'll push it out on Twitter. We're going to say a minimum donation of $300. We'll do the top donation. We'll put a 24-hour thing on it. We'll see where this bid goes.
And I'll sign a book.
You'll sign a book. Okay, so we get a signed book, a signed Oilers sweater, and we'll wrap up this tomorrow at this time. So we'll call it 10:30 tomorrow. We'll know who our winner is. Cameron will follow up with you. That's amazing. I love it. We're going to raise money for mental health counseling. This is we've already got it. Sandra's already given us a bid for $300. So has Two Beaver. So there's already a bidding war. So we're gonna raise some money for mental health. I love you, man. Not just because you're hilarious and you make everybody happy, but also.
Can I end on one quick Edmonton story?
Do whatever you want. Yeah.
I'm performing at an Oilers game. I got the crowd's nuts. It's an amazing night. Fans are amazing. Electric. Connor McDavid. I don't know if you know him. He's a pretty good hockey player.
He's all right.
He's all right. He's going to do well. He scores a goal in overtime. I had met him 5 years earlier. I was on a date in Quebec City when he was there for the Memorial Cup, and he was in there. We said hi. Anyhow, I'm about to go to my locker room after the game. The PR guys for the Oilers say, hey, can you wait? Because I had come around the way where the Oilers dressing room is. And I'm waiting. All the players come by. Some of them give me the fist bump, blah, blah, blah. And Connor comes off, gives me a big oh my God, that was amazing. You were amazing tonight. I'm looking at him. I'm like, no, dude, you were amazing tonight. You scored in overtime and you won. And it two things happened in that moment. First, the PR guys were like, wait a minute, what just happened? But secondly, I realized how humble Connor and NHL hockey guys are. Back to what you said about Darnell Nurse. You know what I mean? And they also care. They care about the crowd, right?
Yeah.
And it's so important for fans to realize that players, athletes put so much time into their craft that we need to cheer them on. So that's my thing. And we also need to cheer each other on right now. And I've been trying to do that the best I can. I know you do that. So let's spread more cheer.
I love it. You know what I'm realizing as you're telling this story? I'm realizing that I have that photo of you hugging Connor on my phone. So as we speak, I'm emailing it from my phone to Sam, so Sam can scramble and put it up on the screen so we can show everybody. We're already over $300. David's bid $325. We got 24 hours here to raise money. That's amazing. Love you very much, man. I can't wait for the next time that we're gonna have a chance to work together. And plus, I owe you a night on the town for what you did for me in Vegas last February. So I look forward to paying that debt. I know I'm leaving it there. It stayed there. I'm not providing details.
No debt. Yeah, it's all about spreading the fun, man.
Is that where you are? Where are you checking in from right now? Are you in Ontario? Are you in Las Vegas? Are you in California? Where are you?
I'm in British Columbia at a top secret location.
You're in BC. Okay, because you have highfalutin. I know I'm supposed to be wrapping. Well, who cares if we wrap the interview? It doesn't matter to me. But you have some connections at like 24 Sussex, don't you? Don't you have? Did I hear a rumor that you have are you going to be like the next throne speech? Are you going to be in the House of Commons? Don't you know a guy?
Well, yeah, I grew up with our now Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. We literally grew up together from grade 1 to 6 at a school in Ottawa. He used to come over and play, and the RCMP would knock on the door, and they'd sweep the house, and then we'd let us play. And we grew up. We would go to Harrington Lake on the weekends, and it was pretty wild. So he's in charge of the country, and I throw sweaty T-shirts at people.
Yeah, but people might be happier to see you out west. So there you go.
Yeah, exactly. I haven't really been in touch with him in a long time, but you know what? I hope for the best for him, because if he's doing well, the country's doing well. Yeah, right?
No kidding, man. Always cheer for Canada. There it is. There, Sam Brooks is so good at his job. There you are hugging. And let me just say, so you're standing. That's called the Chairman's Club, just beyond you there. So that's a pretty. This is a spot of the rink that not many people get to see. It's where the anthem singer Robert Clark stands right before he goes out. It's where I stand. It's where you stand before we go out. I can say that if it was anybody other than you, Cam, that was trying to hug 97 right there as he walks into the dressing room, they would be promptly escorted from the facility. They would not be welcome back.
I still never forget the look of the PR guys. Did Connor just hug you? I'm like,
did he just hug the greatest player in the world?
Hey, we were both really sweaty that night too. That was a great game, and I mean,
I don't know. Now we're getting a bunch of celebrity references. James is wondering. So Matthew Perry from Friends, did he grew up? Did you go to school with him too? Apparently, Matthew.
There's a story in here about me performing on the set of Friends. Yeah.
There you go. People got to buy the book.
Isn't that ironic?
Isn't that ironic? Cameron, so good to have you on the show. Thank you. Seriously, my face hurts right now. I need to stop smiling. I need to calm down my jaw for a second. Cameron Hughes.
Am I really doing this alone? Yes, I am.
Is the world's most electrifying crowd entertainer. No, hang on. I get into the spirit here for you. I can get it.
Come on, let's go. Come on.
Yeah, I mean,
come on, let's go.
I'm not ever going to be too big for getting excited.
Let's go, Alberta.
There we go. All right. There you go. Cameron Hughes, everybody. He's the world's most electrifying crowd entertainer. He's the king of cheer, and you can get his book right now on Amazon or on his website. Follow him on Twitter. Follow him on Instagram, and have a great day. Cheers, brother. Thank you. Well, there's really nowhere to go from there, except I kind of feel like, now I'm getting set for a T-shirt toss.
I'm a long exhale after that. How do you come down after that?
You don't.
Is it easier to come down after that or trash talk?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's like asking somebody, is it easier to chill out after skydiving or Formula One racing? I don't know. I have no idea. But I do know that guy, Nicole says, he got Connor McDavid to smile. That's incredible. Connor loves to smile just when he's got his game face on. He doesn't.
He's stoic.
He is stoic.
So much, yeah.
Lauren says, I don't see the big deal. I got a real hug from a celebrity at Rogers. Lauren and I met at Rogers Place in the Sportsnet Lounge, and we embraced. He walked up. I've told this story, I think, on Real Talk before. So Lauren comes up, and he's like, hey, man. And I was like, hey, man, because, you say hey, man, lots. And he goes, he just says his name. He just goes, Lauren Corbett. And I was like, ah! And we just embraced. We just hugged. It was amazing. Mark says, what a beauty. CJ. Oh, this is Chris. Chris, who was just on our mental health panel, he's still watching. I love that. He says T-shirt toss. He says, man, I miss those. I miss the T-shirt toss.
I got to ask you something.
Yeah.
It's and I was going to ask this actually after the first game this year. It's how are you doing with not being in the barn this season?
Yeah, it's so strange.
Yeah.
It's so strange. I was talking to, a little bit to, Johnny Infamous, the Oilers DJ, was on the show, and
had a chat with him last week.
Yeah, and he's obviously been. Yeah, he's. Are we scooping? I don't want to scoop his announcement.
He's working on a project.
He's working on a project. See, Sam's always like sort of more of the not diplomat, but you're our voice of reason here on the show. I say, Sam, can I mention this? If Sam goes, then we don't mention it. So Johnny's working on it. But I was talking about that, and Robert Clark, the anthem singer. So, all those of us that are, part of, because there are people that are working games. If you're watching the National Hockey League, the NBA, whatever, obviously still the arena announcers are working. Obviously people with the shovels on the ice and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, it's unusual to be watching from home. Last night I'm watching the Oilers and the Jets, just thinking, it was Oilers-Jets last game I worked was the last game. I think it was, March 9th or something of 2020 was the last game. So, yeah, miss it. Let's give a shout out right now to the team at Kubi Energy. Now all I can think about is tossing T-shirts. Oh, and to those of you that were asking if I would throw an old Jespo mug in on the auction, sure. Yeah, I will. I'll even throw one of those airplane-sized Baileys in there so you can have a special coffee in your Jespo mug. All right, so maybe that'll bump the auction up a little bit. We've got Cameron's book signed. We've got the signed Oilers sweater, but let's clarify, it's Cameron and I signing it, and then we'll throw in an old Jespo mug. Happy to do that. Kubi Energy is a Tesla certified solar installer, and they're employing only journeyman electricians to do your solar installs. So if you want to have your solar system on your house, you want to transform it, whether it's a residential or commercial, they've done huge commercial projects. Edmonton Convention Center's one. You can do it with confidence knowing the team at Kubi Energy has you covered. All the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, and they're covering all your paperwork too, including some of those reimbursements that you can qualify for. You don't have to worry about it. They got you covered. And don't forget, Kubi sponsoring Positive Reflections every Monday. We want to hear your good stories, see your amazing videos, like the one 2 Beaver sent us. We can't wait to show that one on Monday. Your stories of resilience, your stories of the letter carrier or the Girl Guides or the soccer coach or whoever it is that made an impact in your life. We want to hear those stories. We share them on Mondays. The team at Local Waste, of course, on Fridays is presenting Trash Talk. Local Waste has been in the waste management game, garbage and recycling, for more than 25 years. Locally owned and operated, very proud to be working with businesses big and small. This is the company you call. You refer to them by their first name, and they call you right back. We're talking Chris and Lauren Labossiere at Local Waste. You can give them a shout anytime. Check them out, localwaste.ca. They love to talk trash. And, of course, their number, 780-242-9746. And then there's the team at Alta Moving and Storage, doing an amazing job when it comes to the pod-style containers. Seems like a trend, but not everybody offers them. Alta Moving and Storage has them available as early as today. Whenever you need them, they have your moving and storage solutions. Of course, the short and long-term storage facilities as well. And it's another local company, so you know that if you have a concern or if you need something that requires some sort of regional awareness, they've got you covered right here in Western Canada, specifically the Metro Edmonton region at altastorage.ca. And of course, a big shout out to the team at Park Power in the electricity, natural gas, and internet game. They've been in there since 2013, and they've made a corporate commitment, which I think is just remarkable. It's why I mention it all the time. 10% of their profits are shared with local nonprofits, with charities, and you get $70 off your first bill, whether it's a business or residential service you're looking for. If you quote the promo code 2021-REAL-TALK at parkpower.ca, they're going to give you $70 off your first bill. Let's check in on, want to check in on where we're at with regards to how people feel about churches paying taxes. This is, I just refreshed my screen here to get us up to date on my Twitter poll. We've been asking you, this was based on a conversation that developed here on Real Talk yesterday. Closing in on 5,500 votes. The numbers are basically holding right where they've been. As a matter of fact, that's kind of strange. They're exactly where they were before, about an hour ago, but about 82% of you asked. And again, there's some nuance here to this conversation, which you've referenced. Sam, maybe let's just leave this up here and let me just at random, so people know that I'm not just trying to sort of cultivate the answers that'll. There's some spicy words there. Lou says, "Render unto Caesar. Even the Lord said they should pay taxes." Josh says it's about time. Murray Billett, formerly of the Edmonton Police Commission. What a beauty Murray is. Look at my private messages are coming up here. Whoops. Murray says they're in the influence of people business. Most still discriminate in many ways and lobby government, so they should tax their business like others. Fake Ezzy says, I think large organizations that have more than a certain level of real estate or investment wealth should hold that equity as a separate organization and pay taxes. Otherwise, most local churches are charitable organizations and operate as such. Would we consider taxing other charities? Whereas Mayor Blaine says, well, then my mind says tax them all, but I understand there's more than fair space for education. Hendrick thinks that my question is poorly worded. He says you're going to ignite a lot of passion. Oh, I see. Okay, this is more of a conspiracy that Hendrick has, because I said churches, Christian congregations, but if I use the word like religious groups like mosques and synagogues and temples, I would get a kinder Canadian response. So Hendrick feels like everyone's just going to pile on Christians. Lori says it depends if they serve the community or themselves. Stephanie says that when a pastor's driving a Beamer and his wife is rocking a Prada purse, then yes. But Stephanie says when my granddad was a preacher, he gave most back to those in need and took only enough to raise his 7 kids. She says that they were charity by definition. That's what the church is supposed to be. That's interesting. I wanted to, Luke Fevin, Luke is, I always forget what the name of it. It's something like the Society of Edmonton Atheists or Atheists of Edmonton or something like that. But Luke is, and I'm not saying that as dismissive, but let me just say that Luke is schooled and has many opinions when it comes to the church and state, when it comes to religious education, receiving funding, etc. Luke argues churches should be taxed and then should get tax relief on charitable work like everybody else. The problem is that all 3 levels of government consider advancement of religion as a criteria for tax privilege. That's incompatible with the Charter and Supreme Court rulings. I wanted to pardon me while I scroll through here, because there's one we had a response. Now there's several. There's many responses here, so maybe I've kind of screwed us over here, Sam, in trying to find this. But here it is. This is what I'm looking for. I wanted to get to Jeremy Duncan's, because Jeremy chimes in and says, as a pastor. So I thought this was great. And let me see. I want to find his full response here. He says, as a pastor, I have mixed feelings. Says large churches absolutely can and probably should pay property taxes, maybe over a certain threshold. But this would be the end of a lot of small neighborhood churches. He says, ironically, it would only make mega churches stronger. Presumably, same rules would apply to mosques and synagogues as well, obviously, and might disproportionately impact smaller faith communities. Maybe a property tax that kicks in over a certain revenue threshold makes sense. And he says, and by the way, I pastor a large church, so my suggestion here is not to save my own community. So he says, I think a property tax on a faith community could be reasonable. So that's kind of interesting. I always, Sam, when we're having these types of conversations, I'm always more inclined. It's like I said the other day, when we talk about, for example, discontent with the government. It's one thing to hear from people that are perpetually critical of that government. It's not to say their opinion doesn't matter, but oh yeah, well, Shannon Phillips or Joe Ceci are upset with Jason Kenney. Yeah, tell me something I don't know. But when a former constituency association of the United Conservative Party, or when a former member of Parliament for the Conservative Party of Canada, or when a former Liberal senator, or when it's some
credibility, and I honestly think he's sort of spot on, and that's why it was like kind of hard for me to take a position on this yesterday when you asked me about it, because like I can very quickly balance the plight of mega churches who are sitting on stacks and stacks and stacks of cash, and tell people to pay tithing so they can literally buy private planes. Like that is in their business model to make the pastors rich. Like they should be taxed heavily, and they should be contributing to the community that they take up so much airspace in. And that's why I think that, something like a moderate property tax, something indexed to the amount of revenue, having to show how much of their money is directly used for charitable work. Like I think that, it's not a churches should or shouldn't pay taxes. It's like, let's open up the tax code and figure out where churches fit in this. And again, I say churches as a catch-all phrase for places of worship.
What we should do, and if you think about conversations we've had on the show even this week, probably the most meaningful thing that you've just said, and probably because it's the common thread through these conversations, is we need to open up the tax code, right?
Yeah.
Because I talked about healthcare premiums. I said maybe we should bring back healthcare premiums, and people just went nuts. I mean, some people said it's a great idea. Some people said, Ryan, why don't you just tell us that you want poor people to die? And I was kind of like, so you have these inflammatory type conversations, but really I think what it indicates is whether you're talking about churches or paying for healthcare or whatever, we could probably stand to reevaluate our tax code. Speaking of that, a small announcement, and I just checked the time. It's almost 11 o'clock.
Jeez.
Yee!
Well, we had a round table and a
speaking
king of cheer.
which, a round table and the king of cheer.
And guests before that,
and
too.
guests before that, too. Max Fawcett and my beautiful bride. Which Jay was watching, and he said that he described my fun conversation with my wife about reality TV as poor journalism. It was not journalism. It was not intended to be journalism. But let me say this. We did have a roundtable booked. I know a lot of people are really excited about it, with Janice Irwin, the NDP MLA, and Vitor Marciano, Brian Jean's former press secretary with the Wild Rose Party. They came together in criticism of my perspective on health premiums. They agreed with each other. And I thought, you know what we need to do is get the two of you on the show to chat. So we had them booked for Friday. Now, life and politics happen, and one of our panelists is no longer available on Friday. So Monday at 9 a.m., we will proudly present, we're going to call it Meet in the Middle Monday. And Janice Irwin and Vitor Marciano from the left and the right are going to come together to talk about health policy and taxation and politics. And it's not going to be boring, I promise you. With Vitor and Janice, there's no freaking way it's going to be boring. So look forward to that. A shout out to Tracy. Now, Tracy, I don't want to spoil you. I've seen this as the father of a 5-year-old. I know that if you start, for example, offering up dessert after one weekday dinner, they want dessert after every weekday dinner. And Tracy is asking for another random trash talk right now. I cannot oblige, mostly because I've not yet narrowed down this week's edition of Trash Talk.
The bonus was already curated.
The bonus was already curated.
Yeah.
Exactly, because I totally blew it last Friday and applied the trash talk tone of voice and the rock and roll music and even the air guitar to emails that were calm and reasonable and rational. I picked up the wrong pile. So we had those trash talk. But I will. It's perfect, Tracy. You've set me up for success here, and we'll use this to say goodbye today so everyone can get on with their day. Jacques Lessard, what a wonderful name. Jacques wrote in and titled this trash talk, but it's not a trash talk. And that's not a shot at Jacques. It's just too calm and reasonable and rational to be in trash talk, but it's a good email. So we'll wrap with this. A reminder, you can email us anytime. talk@ryanjesperson.com. We get a few hundred of them every day. We so appreciate them. We try to respond to as many as we can. Jacques says, Ryan, I love the idea of the roundtable discussions that you host on Real Talk, but I feel like they're not enough. Not enough to heal this current political climate. The roundtables have personalities from all sides of the political aisle, but they're mostly moderates. The problem is they're too reasonable. The real problem is that, in today's political world, it's the rise of the unreasonable. When one side makes up facts instead of debating the merits of those facts and what steps might be needed to move forward, a proper discussion cannot be had. An example of this, says Jacques, would be climate change. Both sides of the aisle should agree that it's happening, and reasonable people should be able to have healthy discussions on how to proceed on tackling that problem. But how do you have rational discussion with those that believe it's not a thing? He says a good discussion cannot be had, as you can only have civil discussion if basic facts are agreed upon. The sad thing is that you now have political leaders leaning on these unreasonable individuals because it gives them a strong base for re-election. Politicians only care about the power they wield, and they seem to use anything to solidify their base. That just my 2 cents from Jacques Lessard, a valued member of the Real Talk audience. Thanks, Jacques. We'll get to more of your emails tomorrow. Coming up on the show tomorrow, very excited. We're going to be welcoming in, as promised, an agriculture roundtable. What are we not talking about this time of year that we should be? Plus, Tom Rockman on the disappearance of discourse, why he's afraid to head out on Twitter. And don't forget Andrew Fung from Kim's Convenience joining us Friday. Have a great day.